Hello, welcome to Inside the Birds Pregame live here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook on Delaware Ave, where Philly loves a winner. It sort of feels like we were all just here 4 days ago. Oh wait, we were. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside my co-host Adam Caplan. Joining us, as always, we've got our tape breakdown master, Greg Cosell.
Jeff.
And former Eagles wide receiver, Jason Avant, looking like he just came off a set of Mary Poppins. How you doing, Jason? Looking like Mark.
Yeah.
What's up, fellas? How you guys doing?
I'm just looking to get a hit tonight.
Yeah. Well,
geez,
man,
you had to
low
do that.
Shots fired
Wow.
from Greg Cosell on the Phillies already. Spoken like a New York City shortstop.
Well, I was once.
That's true.
A long time ago.
That's true.
Which century was that?
Well, it's been quite a week in Philadelphia sports. Greg alluding to Phillies in the World Series. And the Eagles are chasing history tonight as they go to Houston's NRG Stadium, looking to defeat the one-win Houston Texans and improve to 8-0 on the year. The Eagles have never in franchise history started 8-0. And conversely, the Houston Texans never in franchise history have beaten the Philadelphia Eagles. So the stage is set for history tonight on Thursday Night Football. The Eagles did improve to 7-0 by beating the Steelers 35-13. The Houston Texans, as Greg might say, they're a little bit of a tough watch. They are 1-5-1 after losing 17-10 to the, I believe, the Tennessee Titans in their last game. Here's all you need to know about this game, guys. The Texans have scored fewer points all year long than the Eagles have scored in the second quarter.
Wow.
On top of that, the Texans will be starting 9 rookies tonight. So that's kind of the realm we're getting into here on Thursday
And 2
Night
backup
Football.
receivers, yeah.
Yes, 2 backup receivers. We're going to get into all that. Obviously, this is the first Thursday night game for the Birds since that disastrous game against Tampa Bay last year. Totally different team. But there is plenty of time right now, and Adam mentioned this already. It's fired up here at Rivers Casino. You're going to have Eagles, you're going to have Phillies tonight. You got the fans piling in. There's all sorts of jerseys. There's a great opportunity to come down here, place your bets if you want to do that, sit in the little leather seats, games on big screen TVs. It is football watching heaven. It could be baseball watching heaven, sports watching heaven tonight here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook in Philadelphia. And of course, we're here at Jack's Bar and Grill, where you can take advantage of a number of fantastic food and drink specials. Also, for those on YouTube, please leave a comment for us in your comment box, and we'll try to get to it with your score prediction or a question. Fellas, is the energy level high? I know it was 4 days ago.
Thursday Night Football. Come on.
Yeah. It is the Texans, so I didn't know if you guys were like,
It's still an NFL game.
It is an NFL game.
It's the only NFL game tonight.
That's correct.
That's right. All right, we're going to get into the X and O's of this matchup. As always, we like to start with a big picture outlook. And Jason, I know you talked about it on the Q&A podcast with Quentin Michael, but talk to our viewers about the short turnaround style game here when you play Thursday night and what the preparation is like throughout the week.
Yeah, usually the preparation for a game like this, it's less on the field work and a lot more in the classroom. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of walkthroughs and barely you even run hard this week. You're just trying to make sure that your assignment pure. And there's a few different philosophies that, coaches or teams have. Some will carry more in the previous game plan and whatever information or plays that don't get used, it'll carry over. And you start to get into more base plays and plays that you see in training camp. Things that you don't have to think about much, things that will mesh well with the defense that you're playing. Like, so you'll bring out your cover 2 plays, your cover 3 plays, or whatever their defense is tonight. And you go over those plays that you've practiced pretty much all year.
Okay.
And usually during the season, you're scripting plays for that team that you're going against.
Right.
This game plan, you're going to just go over your natural game plan that everyone learns in training camp.
Sure.
Staples.
So keep it simple is sort of the principle tonight for both teams.
Keep it simple. You may have 1 or 2 nuances here, but they're going to be in the confines of your base kind of offense, your staple plays.
Just 1 second. How long are the walkthroughs? Because I know you can only really have a walkthrough. How long would they be leading up?
I want to say about an hour, hour and a half, something along those lines. But you're walking through like twice a day. Like, so you go into the film room, you come out and you walk through, you go back in the film room, you come out and walk through again, right? So you're just making sure that your assignment pure, and they're trying to keep as much from the previous game plan as possible, right? A lot of teams do, especially if the defensive coordinators are similar, right? So some of those, there's always plays that can work for everyone.
Right.
So they're trying to just keep it as simple as possible.
a lot
And
of
fresh.
walking.
I love it. And usually this was the time with Coach Reed that the teams would go on a run, because the Thursday night game would usually be like later in the season.
Right.
And because we were tired from so many practices and him keeping us the pads on so long, during this time of the year, you win the Thursday night game, you keep the Thursday night schedule for the rest of the season.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it would be.
Oh, a lot of walkthroughs, huh?
the rest of the
Yeah,
year.
Really? I didn't know
a
that
lot
he
of
was doing that
incentives.
then.
Yeah, a lot of incentives when you
Okay.
come off buys and Thursday night games. you know?
Interesting. So,
Especially if you play really well. I remember the year we beat the Cardinals.
Oh,
like
man,
really
2008.
bad.
Oh, you smoked him here in Philly.
Yeah, for the rest of the year we were,
I think might have
we were
been
walking
Kurt.
through.
That was Kurt Warner's maybe perhaps his
We
worst
lost
game.
to him in the freaking
Yeah.
playoffs. But
Oh,
Yeah,
so that was
that's
the same
Thursday
year?
night game
Yeah.
though.
Oh, okay.
yeah, 2008
Took 'em
season.
for granted,
Remember
yeah.
that. That's an infamous season. Obviously Donovan got benched against the Ravens the week before, and then he came back and had that great Thursday night game.
Yep.
Interesting. Also, the last time the Phillies won the World Series, just saying, 2008.
Fancy that.
Fields!
Greg Cosell, I have a two-part question for
Do I need a
Thursday
two-part
night.
answer?
You do. You
Okay.
do. When you watch tape of Thursday night games, can you tell that
No.
they're a little bit different? Like the
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, what Jay's saying is 100% true, though. You tend to see more staples than, I don't want to say gimmicks. Gimmicks isn't the right word, but you tend to see more staples than
Sure.
expansive stuff.
Right.
Because, like for instance, and we'll get into this specifically more, but the Texans, it's Lovie Smith, they play as high a percentage of cover two as any team in the league.
Right.
Every team beginning with OTAs and through training camp has cover two beaters.
Yes.
So you're going to whip out your cover two beaters. Everybody knows what they are.
Right.
The next highest percentage they play is cover three. So you're going to have cover three beaters. So it all just comes down to what you're anticipating in a certain down and distance situation.
Gotcha.
And then there's routes that obviously can beat both.
Sure.
Concepts that beat both. But no, I mean, I wouldn't say when I watch a Thursday night game, I'm necessarily conscious that I'm watching a Thursday night game.
Okay. More important, second follow-up question. How tough of a watch are the Houston Texans? By the way, that is a Greg Cosellism, by the way, where
Right,
he doesn't want to
right.
be too harsh, but
Right,
he's got to
right.
tell you
Just
that's
what
not-
from the tape study, what do they struggle with? Everything or certain things?
Well, offensively, they're a little tough because for a number of reasons, which we can get into. But it probably starts with the fact that other than the left tackle, their offensive line isn't very good. And when your offensive line isn't very good, you tend to have a lot of issues.
Yes.
That permeates through your entire offense. And the other thing, and we'll go into this in more detail, is their defense, there's no mystery to their defense at all. They line up and they play.
Right.
They rush four, they play cover two, they play some cover three. If it's 3rd and 2, they'll play man. Everybody plays man if it's 3rd and 2.
Yeah.
But there's no mystery to what they do.
Gotcha.
You're not. This is not a big, and Jay could speak to this as well. This is not a big classroom game, homework game, and we're going to see a lot of different things that we really have to prepare for. That hey, maybe we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah.
You know,
It's the same. The same is the same. Lovey's the same.
yeah,
Gotcha.
it's the same.
Yeah.
So it's there's not a lot of mystery to what they do on defense, and the bottom line is they really don't have the personnel to execute this style of defense at a high level. If you have 3 big-time pass rushers on your D-line, let's say, you can play cover 2 as a foundation, and it can be successful.
Right.
They don't have that.
No,
Yeah.
This is not the old Tampa Bay Bucs
No.
defense.
But not just the Bucks. You had
Or,
Lance
you know,
Briggs
yeah.
and Urlacher.
Right,
and
right,
you had a
right.
bunch of Peanut Tillman. You had Mike Brown. There was a bunch
Bunch
of
of-
guys that
Right.
were Pro Bowlers on one
Right.
team, and it's hard to,
Right. They don't. I mean, you could argue their best pass rusher, and he's clearly far more toward the end, is Jerry Hughes.
Yeah.
And he's clearly more toward the end than the beginning.
Sure. So I had your voice in my head in the last 3 days because for
Oh.
all the things you just mentioned,
I feel for you.
it was a tough script to write.
Right.
On short rest, especially.
Right.
Adam, the Eagles did not make another trade at the deadline when seemingly every other team did at the deadline day. So I'm going to ask you now, you've seen what the rest of the league has done. The Minnesota Vikings made a pretty big move. The 49ers made a move with McCaffrey. When you look at the Eagles
The
now,
Dolphins.
do you feel do you feel like teams have gotten closer, or do you still think class in the NFC by a pretty stretch?
I still think the Eagles are the number one team, and Bills in the other conference, so the Chiefs are right there.
Yeah.
But they did, again, you say the deadline. The deadline was on Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, but remember, they still made a trade for Quinn, and we'll see how Robert Quinn. See, the problem with Quinn is he had 2 practices, then he has walkthroughs this week. So they need to get him in a regular practice week where he gets his role Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and they could execute with him. So that'll come after this bye. Remember, they play Washington the following week, so they'll have a regular week of practice. But, yeah, look, the Niners made a major move. But for a running back who's dynamic, there's no question about it. He helps their offense, but they've got major concerns on defense with injuries. They're going to be good. I still believe they're going to win that division. The Vikings make the big trade for Hockenson in the division, which you just don't see.
No.
Yeah,
But my understanding there was even if Detroit kept him, they were not going to extend his contract after the season. Whether it was injuries or maybe they thought he should have been better than he was. But the Vikings left Irv Smith with a significant high ankle sprain.
Right.
So they're going to go with Hockenson in, who's a really good all-around tight end. That helps their offense. I still have questions about their secondary. But the Eagles here, they just have the best, not only have the best 53, look at their depth. If you just look at their depth per position, in the salary cap era, you're not supposed to have depth. That's what Bill Pulling would tell us.
Right.
That's why there's a cap.
Right.
But somehow, they've been able to manipulate the cap well, do restructures, and still have a very good football team. And they have great depth. They've had some injuries, but they still have very good depth.
Dallas made a really subtle move compared to some of the others. They brought in Jonathan Hankins. They are getting rid of. They got rid of Tristan Hill. They had a okay run defense. It struggled at times. How much is that going to help? He's at this point of his career.
Well, that's what his game is.
Right.
They obviously addressed a need. You know, Hankins has been with a number of teams since he's been out of Ohio State, but he's a run defender.
Right.
And they felt they obviously needed that guy, particularly on early downs. He's not a pass rusher. They don't need pass rushers. They can rush the quarterback.
Right.
They need to shore up their run defense. But just if I could respond to one thing Adam says.
Sure.
I think with a guy like Robert Quinn, and this is probably true of receivers too, if you get a receiver and let's say they don't have a lot of time, you can give them, 2 or 3 routes that they know how to run. You're not giving them the entire playbook. You're not moving them around. There's a great Don Coryell story about that, but for another time perhaps. but so with Robert Quinn, what is Robert Quinn at his best at? He's a high side pass rusher.
Right.
So this week he almost, I think every snap was pretty much in a sub front. So you put him at a wide 9, and he's a high side pass rusher.
There you go.
Oh, was he the wide 9?
Pretty much.
Oh, wow.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah. And normally he rushes from the right side of the defensive front, so he can do that. He doesn't need to know every nuance of the playbook in order to rush from the high side to the high side from the right defensive end position.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk about the injuries that are going to impact this game because for both sides, they have many. The Eagles only have a couple, but one of them is very significant. For the first time this year, the Eagles will be without their first-round pick, mammoth defensive tackle, Jordan Davis. He sustained an ankle injury, and as we understand it from our sourcing, it's a significant injury. He's obviously been placed on injured reserve. As we hear, it's a high ankle, but there's also some leg ankle area issues, some things going on there. So what they have to figure out is, will he need further treatment after the 3 or 4 weeks, or will this thing just heal? And Adam, you remember, it's not uncommon for the Eagles to have some big men with some ankle injuries.
Yeah, no doubt about it. In fact, typically if you look at injury reports and what teams do with high ankle sprains, more often than not, because it's typically a 4-to-6 week injury, they won't put the guy on injured reserve. They put him on immediately this week.
Yeah.
That tells me that they know it's not only more than 4 weeks. You look at a big guy who's well over 300 pounds and an ankle. It looked bad, if you remember. I was worried he broke it. It did look bad, but again, it's a high ankle sprain, as you said, with some other concerns here. So we'll see when he comes back, and we'll get into how we think he'll be replaced. But that's the one thing tonight. The one thing they do well, the Texans, with Damian Pierce, is run the football.
Yes.
And we'll see a lot of that tonight.
We are going to talk during the show about schematically what the Eagles will do to compensate, because it's not like this is not a player where it becomes next man up mentality, because they don't have another player on the 53 who's a 350-pound nose tackle pure. They have some guys who have played it before, but not exactly that kind of size and skill set. So we'll see what they do there. The other injury, backup safety, nickelback Josiah Scott. He's also out with an ankle injury. Other than that, they are fairly healthy and ready to go. shouldn't be too much of an issue. So, kind of more of the same for the Eagles, who've been fairly healthy this year. The Texans, not so much. They will be, as if the record wasn't bad enough, they will be without both of their starting wide receivers tonight. The Michigan man, Nico Collins, is out with a groin injury.
Right.
Yeah, that is too bad. And then Brandon Cooks is out because he's just unhappy that he's still a Texan, as far as we know.
Yeah, his tweets were pretty obvious that he was not happy.
Hey, don't look at me.
So right?
Yeah, we will go to Jason for his viewpoint on this.
Can I go now?
Jay's views, yes.
Well, he's been on contenders. He was on the Saints when Drew Brees was there.
Yes.
He was in New England.
Yes.
He was in the Rams.
That's right.
And he dropped a couple passes in their Super Bowl.
Yes.
Got knocked out of bounds.
I remember.
Got knocked out of the game against the Eagles running like haphazardly, just random. So he's had his opportunities to play on some pretty good teams, and the good teams hadn't wanted him.
Right.
So he found himself with the Texans. You got to learn how to shut up and just do your job sometimes,
Right.
because you have a track record of not performing in the big stages. Yes, you have good stats, but in the biggest moments, he has not been there, and that's been his MO, his rep around the league.
I always find it interesting when a guy who's very talented, a first-round pick, is on four
and
different
puts up
teams.
numbers.
Yeah,
six
and
wins.
he's on
Great
four
year
different
last
teams.
year.
Yeah.
Great year last year.
He puts up
Huge.
numbers. It's critical moments and critical situations. When you go back and watch him, third downs, fourth downs, game on the line, with all of those teams I just named, not just the Texans. So when you don't have many suitors, treat the one that you have right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
No
it was
doubt
interesting
about
that New England didn't want him because at the time they didn't have much at wide receiver.
Yeah.
And he actually did well for them, but they were not interested in keeping him.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing, is that the teams that have gotten rid of Brandon Cooks are kind of teams that are known for being winning organizations.
Right.
The Saints, at the time they did,
Right.
winning organization. New England Patriots, I think we could say, is a new winning organization. What was the second
The
team?
Rams.
The Rams.
The
The
Rams,
Rams
they
are
just
now a
won.
winning organization.
And by the
They
way,
were-
he should have been an Eagle in 2014. The Eagles were
They
going to
wanted
take him.
Yeah.
And then the Saints traded up because the word leaked out that the Eagles wanted him. But this situation, man, Jason, here's a question for you. When you were playing wherever team you were with, when there was an issue with a player, and you as you got older, would you talk to these guys and say, "Hey, man, we need you. Suck it up"?
At this level, yes, you try to talk to everyone, but at this level, their mindset is already mature.
Right.
The coaching has already been had. The parenting has already been established, right? Everything has already been done. So you can try to talk to them, and you can try, but at the end of the day, a person is going to be who they are. And it's very, unfortunate at times that, some players kind of sabotage themselves, even though that they're good, they're talented. Though you're talented, doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get your way all the time. And learning how to compromise, learning how to be a part of the team is a different character trait that's very, very underrated and not scrutinized enough.
So let me ask you a question. Obviously, we know players, no one talks about money. That's off limits.
Yeah.
But when a player does what Cooks is doing, how is that received by other players?
Well, you like there are some dudes that you go to battle with, and there's
Right.
some dudes that's just for themselves.
Right.
And you know it, and
Right.
you know it. You can't, as a player, go in and call them out in the media or do anything
Right,
like
right.
that, because then you become a distraction.
Sure.
But you let them know, like, dude, you're a pussy. Like, no offense, but that like those
say
are,
that.
Those
can
are
say that on
those
Inside
are
The
the
Birds.
types of things.
Right,
Those
right.
are the types of things that will go on in the locker room.
Right.
So the guys know you can't.
You can't, yeah.
You can't.
The subplot is that do players look and say, "Is that guy
Excuse me
getting
for any?
Is that guy getting?
It's okay.
Is he getting a game check to just sit there and say, "I don't want to play"? I've always find
Yeah.
that part fascinating, but you know
Well,
what?
we
One
don't
ain't
go
gonna
about
hurt.
the
Hope
money.
or hurt him
Right,
that
right.
way.
No
We
one
can't
talks
control
about
the
the
money.
money.
We
Yeah.
just want,
Exactly.
there's dudes that are getting hurt out here.
Right,
There's
right.
dudes that are playing through injuries.
Right.
Correct.
And you don't want to play because you're disgruntled.
Because his feelings
Right,
are
right.
hurt.
No,
His feelings are hurt. So that's what we'll call it. Brandon Cooks on the injury report, hurt feelings. Also out.
He's
Defensive
sad.
tackle.
He's sad.
He's sad. Malik
I don't think he's sad. I think he's mad.
Defensive tackle Malik Collins. Eagles fans may remember him from his days with the Cowboys.
Yep.
He is also out tonight with a chest injury. And they have a good pass rusher named Jonathan Greenard. I don't know if a lot of
Yeah.
Eagles fans know about him, but he's been on
He's on IR.
On IR.
Yeah,
so he
and
won't be
he's
playing
a
tonight
big
either.
loss because I remember he came out of the University of Florida. I remember watching him, and in the NFL, he's actually been, he's flashed as a pass rusher, but he hasn't played much
All right, so that is the Houston Texans situation as they come into tonight's game. So, it's kind of, again, a little bit of a tough watch.
So you got Philip Dorsett, who can run.
Philip Dorsett,
pick, drafted by Ryan Grigson, overdrafted. But Chris Moore was a special teams player only for the Ravens, who could run, by the way. And now he's pressed into service here because they just don't have anybody else. In fact, we'll see who they had to bring up 2 receivers from the practice squad.
Who are they?
I'm going to find out.
We will find out when the actives come out, especially.
Well, no, but I'm going to see
have.
who they put out. I'm interested to see who they.
Dorset.
Yeah.
Is he in there?
Dorset
and Brown will start, and then they'll probably throw some other guys. And Tyler Johnson, don't they have?
Tyron Johnson.
Tyron Johnson.
Oh, from the Chargers.
Right, who can run.
He can run, too.
Yeah. He averaged over 20 yards per catch 2 years ago.
He can run.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with our friend Tyrone Johnson from 97.5 The Fanatic, who's actually doing a watch party tonight here at Rivers Casino. So if anybody wants to come down to see us, they can also see Tyrone. All right, let's start with the big topic here. Jason, you had said on this show 4 days ago that when you're coming out of a bye week, what teams do is evaluate certain things, and then they may make some alterations just so that they don't become stale and that they can surprise their opponent. And sure enough, the Eagles come out against the Pittsburgh Steelers with a whole slew of shot plays down the field, right? Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown connect with
yes
on
and
three.
no. All right.
Did you not hit shot plays? Are you saying they didn't?
Well,
if you want to discuss the plays, we can.
Sure, we will.
Well,
Okay.
did they hit them?
They hit on shot plays, did I not?
They hit on shot plays, and then this is what lets me know that there was talk about it during the bye week. Whenever you see Quez Watkins get featured on a go route, just out of the blue randomly on the left side, like that right there is, look, we got to get him the ball more. And a lot of the deep one to A.J. Brown, the first one,
It was a misread.
Yeah, this is a misread.
It was a misread.
But he took it.
Yeah.
But
it should have been picked off by Minkah Fitzpatrick. It was a bad read.
I've watched that 100 times, and I'm just putting myself in Minkah's mindset and I'm thinking, how in the world does he not?
That's why I was so mad.
He was still moving backwards though. He didn't
right.
get
hands right there though.
Yeah,
right.
At the very least, deflected.
But I mean,
whenever you get a DB in an awkward position and he's not facing the ball, your chances of winning is very high as a receiver.
I got you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know it's Minkah
Especially
Fitzpatrick.
when you're A.J. Brown and you got hands like that.
Minkah, if he's looking at the quarterback and he's going forward, then you're in trouble. But if he's trying to be a receiver, we're going to win that.
Oh, because it's hard to locate the ball. If you're not used to doing that, ball locate as a DB.
We're seeing it first.
Right.
We're going to see that first.
So the point being that you felt what you saw was typical of come out of the bye week and try to do some things maybe out of formations that you have run before, but done things differently out of them.
I just thought that the opportunistic mindset was there.
Gotcha. Wasn't one of the touchdowns really supposed to look like a tunnel screen, but then Jalen threw it deep
talking about the Pascal
one? I think it was
the Pascal one.
I thought it was the second one to AJ down the right side where there was a
that was
setting up an RPO screen.
Both of those were
right.
Yeah.
Fake bubble to
the first
to
one,
too.
the second AJ one was on 3rd and 8, so that was not off a screen.
Right. So
that was a 6-man pressure that he beat. Yeah.
So go ahead. I was going to ask
well,
you
the first
on
one,
the touchdowns.
The first one was a route that everybody has in their playbook. There's different names for it. I call it dagger. It was basically the vertical route in dagger. 99% of the time was a clear route, and actually Devonta Smith was wide open on the dig. That really is where the ball should have gone, but he threw it up, and it turned out to be a touchdown.
You think that was just I trust my guy to make a play?
Maybe.
Here?
I mean, I'd have to know what's in Jalen Hurts' head. I can't answer that, but
I've caught one before.
What's that?
I've caught a couple of those clear routes.
Clear routes.
But I mean, that's basically.
He's right though. It's 99% of the time you're running. It's a love of the game route.
Right.
Love
of the game route.
So I mean, again, I don't know why it turned out to be a touchdown. The second one was 3rd and 8, if I'm not mistaken, and that's where they had a 6-man front, and he could see that it was press on Watkins in the slot to the right and AJ in the slot outside of Watkins, and there was a post safety. He actually called Goddard back into the backfield to make sure that he was all locked up because he knew he had one-on-ones. He absolutely knew he had Brown one-on-one. He was the outside receiver, and you could be the best post safety in the game, but from the middle of the field, you're not getting to the pylon on a fade ball throw like that. You're not getting there.
That was you're talking about
the third
one. The third,
yeah.
I think that was the third.
Was that the third one?
That's the one where Mika almost got there. He almost.
That's the one. That's the stutter and go.
No.
No?
I
Okay.
think it was the second one.
I'll
tell you in a second.
This is what happens when A.J. Brown catches too many touchdowns. We can't get on the same page as to which one's which.
No, it was the one that ended the second possession, so it was the second one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second
Right,
one. Got
right.
it.
The third one came out of no huddle tempo. That was totally different because they were no huddle tempo.
Right.
But the Pascal one is fascinating because they set that up earlier in the game. Do you want to
Go
get into
ahead.
that
With
now?
what? With what?
They had the exact same formation with the exact same defenders on maybe the 6th or 7th play of the game, and they threw the screen to Goddard for 9 yards maybe on 2nd and 10.
Yeah.
And they came back, maybe it was play 30, I don't chart it by plays like that, but it was about play 30, give or take, with the exact same formation look. Edmonds was over the slot both times. He was over the slot with Goddard, and it was Pascal who was in the slot, and then on the play 30, it was the exact same formation, and Edmonds was again over Pascal.
Sure.
And that's where they pumped the screen to Goddard, and they just let Pascal run vertically, and there was no one there.
Adam, this is something that we've sort of talked about this year, what we've seen from Shane Steichen, the play caller, Nick Sirianni, which is the sequencing, which is running certain plays now
Yes. You've talked
to
about
either
that,
set up plays later
Yep.
or within even a certain drive where you know if you're successful on first down, then you're pretty positive you know what you want to do on second and then third.
It's so funny you say that because I'm older and have been talked to a lot of coaches who coached in the 80s and 90s who I've had great conversations with through the years. Those guys think of offense just that way. They think that you're setting up. You're playing a 4-quarter game.
Right.
You're setting things up. That the game's not about individual plays, which I think permeates the college game a lot.
Yeah.
Hey, let's make a play. Whereas I think the really good NFL coaches think in terms of let's see what we're going to get. Let's line up in this formation. Let's use this motion.
Right.
Let's do this particular thing, and let's bank the reaction that
Yeah.
we get because we can take advantage of that later.
That's accurate. That's 100% accurate.
Yeah.
You never have one play on a Sunday that's isolated.
Right.
There will never be a play that's isolated. Meaning, if there's a run play off of it, there's going to be a pass play. If there's a screen play off of it, there's going to be something else off of it. So it's always a sequence. It's
And I think
always
the Eagles
setting
are
up
really
something
good
else.
at that.
Yeah, they are.
That's what I think they're
It's
really
always,
good at.
always.
They've done, I
Yeah.
think, probably their best job we've seen in a while
Yeah.
in doing that. And Adam, in that game Sunday was one of the times where what you talked about was where sometimes the game doesn't match the tape or the data, but here's a time where it did, where it said the Steelers were going to give you this kind of looks. They're not very good at defending the deep ball, and sure enough, the Eagles went and seized on that.
They took some shots down the field, but the thing is, the data showed they give a ton of production to opposing receivers. Every team that's got decent receivers, they're going to get the football. Someone's going to be isolated. This is very reminiscent of the 17 team. John D. Flippo came on our show, and he pointed out some of the games that were in their game plan meeting. One of them, they said, we're going after Aqib Talib. When he was on Denver, they scored 51 points that game. He had the bullseye on his back. We're going after him. I don't know who was going to line up against A.J. Brown, but if he got single coverage, the ball's going to him. This is coaching, and I like this staff. They are very matchup oriented. The 17 staff was extremely matchup oriented.
Yeah.
When the data shows it and the tape shows it, do this. They didn't do so much of it, I think, in 2020, probably because they didn't have very good receivers, but now they've got a great group of pass targets, and they're taking advantage of these matchups.
It'll be a good one today. I'm looking forward to it.
Right.
Yeah, but what did they do? Because the Texans are so bad against the run.
Yeah.
What do you
They
think
do
they'll come
whatever
out?
they want to do.
No, I'm
That's the
I'm
question.
talking about in man situations. I love Stingley Jr. I love him. I've seen him make some plays this year. I like the way he plays.
Greg, has he given up some plays too? Has Stingley been cut up?
Yeah, I think he's been, he's a rookie, and I think he's had really good moments, and he's had, some rougher moments, but you can see the traits. They don't play a ton of man, You know, and again, that's a whole different argument now about what you should be playing if you have Stingley. Now, of course, on the other side they have Steven Nelson, and he's not really a man corner. So, you know,
cover 2, baby.
right.
Well,
right.
If there was one signing that I thought really made sense, it was Steven Nelson to the Texans, right?
And the other factor is, too, their second-round pick is Jalen Petrie from Baylor.
Yeah.
And Jalen Petrie was a great college player who was asked to do a lot of things. One thing he was not asked to do in college was play man coverage. So he's not really a man defender either. He's around the ball a lot, but he's little.
Right.
And he's often around the ball when it's 8 or 9 yards down the field. He's a little to be playing. See, in college, he played in the box. He even played on the line of scrimmage in college. He can't really do that in the NFL.
Gotcha.
So he's a guy, and it's funny because I struggled with what he would be in the NFL watching his tape, even though he was a great college player, you know, very productive. But I kept trying to figure out what is his position going to be as a starting player.
Sure.
And, you know, because he didn't play a lot on the back end either.
Yeah.
By the way, I blame you for this. I have a whole segment on the secondary for Texans built in later, and you had to ask about Derek Stingley.
Oh, well, there's plenty more to talk about.
I can't wait to talk about the Houston Texans secondary.
There are a lot of good matchups.
It's going to be fantastic. Riveting stuff. No, what is really interesting about this matchup from Philadelphia Eagles standpoint is that Jalen Hurts goes home to Houston. Some people, you know, it's just where they're from, not a big deal, but he actually talked this week about how special it was for him to go home and play at Energy Stadium. So I wanted everybody to hear what Jalen Hurts had to say.
Going back to Houston, it should be fun. It's always been a dream of mine to play in NRG Reliant Stadium. And, you know, I've spent a lot of time in that city. My childhood, growing up in Houston, going to watch the Texans play, being in the Texans facility as a kid, going to watch high school, you know, playoff games in that stadium, and not having the opportunity to ever play in it. So I have an opportunity this week, and I'm looking forward to playing back home. Be fun.
That was Jalen Hurts, who tonight will lead the Philadelphia Eagles into NRG Stadium in Houston, where he grew up, and he's very excited. You can tell he has a lot of fond memories of Houston. He got caught a couple years ago wearing an Astros hat, and everybody's been recirculating that picture, but that was from
He
like
won't be
2
doing that
years ago.
tonight.
He will not. He will not. He will not.
Hey,
he will
you
be trying to
go
impress
as
the home
hard,
crowd, though. So I got to ask, Jay, you're from Chicago.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. During your Eagles career, the Eagles went to Chicago 3 straight times.
Yeah.
I won't even go through the record because you know
so
that's not
we're
matter.
1 and 2. I think.
Yeah, yes, 1 and 2. Well, he brought it up. No, but what was that like for you? And
They were
I
a
mean,
good team too, though.
did you ever put like pressure upon yourself being like at home? I mean, was that a thing for you at all?
There is an amount of pressure that's on you without you putting it on yourself, right? Because you have family.
That's what I was
You have
getting.
family.
At, yeah.
Hey, I want a jersey. I want some cleats. I want some gloves. Give me some tickets. You know, I need some money.
Take pictures.
Whatever it is, you know. So there's the added pressure of just that alone. So
Right.
he probably will have 50, 60 people at the game. You know, so because they don't get an opportunity to come to Philadelphia, so that's a lot to manage. Hopefully, his parents or his agent or whoever's close to him is managing that part. So that pressure point is that, did I want to perform good at home? Yeah. I want to perform really well at home.
You did catch a touchdown at Soldier Field.
I remember the play. Yeah,
Tell me about
it. It was a chip. I had to chip the end because we always chip. Right. The helped out the left tackle.
That's about all Andy ever did to help.
For me, and I chipped the left tackle, and it was a screen off of it, and Nick Cole got out in front of me, and I scored a touchdown. Yeah,
Nick Cole?
Yeah, it was the first time I ever caught a screen in the NFL. I was like, dude, you got to throw me a screen all the time. See, look, you guys are missing out.
Well, if it was a Thursday night game, then it would have been the rest of the year. We got to throw screens to Jason Avant.
Soldier Field, grass stadium, right? Grass.
Oh, you had to wear 7 studs. I hated it. 7 stud cleats for the fans out there that don't know. There's a longer spike that you have to have in order for you to have traction. If you wear regular cleats, you're going to slip and slide the entire day. Soldier Field, Notre Dame, those 2 places, for sure you got to have 7 studs.
Let me tell you something about Soldier Field. I loved, emphasis on Soldier Field until they renovated it. Until they put that
the ugly
spaceship-looking thing and just dropped it right on the bowl. I was saying, what is going on here?
Yeah,
because the front doesn't match the bottom. The top don't match the bottom.
Look like a BBL.
I went to a preseason game there.
I was never there.
You've never been. It is a nice.
It's a cool stadium,
beautiful.
yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Except for that renovation was awful. It's just awful. All right, if you guys thought A.J. Brown's 155-yard effort was pretty good, 3
By the
touchdowns.
way, just before you continue,
Yes.
He was my player of the game on
Oh, he
Sunday.
was.
I just thought I'd mention
I was
that.
wondering who did that.
I
Yeah,
did-
that
I
was a
just-
good call.
I
Who
just-
do we have? Hurts?
By the-
We had Hurts.
Yeah, I did.
I think
We
who
both
had
had
You
Hurts.
did the cop-out. You
Yeah.
picked
But
the
here's the
quarterback.
question, though. Going in, did you think like there was just the matchup dictated that he could have a big game?
Yes.
Okay.
I think
you go.
Hurts was the player of the game, though.
They both were.
Hold on.
You know.
11 targets, 6 catches. I think Hurts had the better game.
But how often does a wideout get 3 touchdowns
In the
a
first
game?
half,
Oh, yeah, you're
right?
Right.
Did he have them all in the first
And
half?
by the way,
Career high, though. 4 touchdowns.
By the way, there was another almost touchdown on a great scheme play, right? Wide open on sort of a wrap concept,
Yeah.
and then they throw. I mean, all Jalen has to do is throw it down the middle. He catches it, reverses field like very few
I know the
players
play.
can do,
Yeah.
and then he got tripped up at the end. Or it could have been 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, he had a few more opportunities.
Yeah.
That's what. Remember, he was like, he should have scored on that one.
He knew he should have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he averaged 26 yards per catch against the Steelers, so I'm sure they're still looking at the tape wondering if they can defend that guy.
One thing for both of you guys, Jay and Greg, when you look at A.J. Brown, when you watch his tape, because people talk about Alshon Jeffrey, how he was physical as well, but he never really ran well. How well does A.J. Brown run to you on tape?
That's a totally different ball game.
Gotcha.
Alshon Jeffrey was like a slow, methodical mover, was a bigger body, can out-athlete you at the top of the break. A.J. Brown's more of an explosive player. He's quick twitch. I said it a couple times this week. If we're playing chess, he's the queen. Right? He can beat you in
love that
multiple.
quote, by the way.
That was great.
He can beat you in a multitude of ways, right? So he can take it short, take it long, catch it deep. He can outman you at the line of scrimmage with just sheer power, and he has quickness to it, right? And then there's nuances to me that I love about him is knowing where people are on the field, knowing where people are. When you catch the ball, what angle I have to break in order to get a guy think I'm going the opposite way. Knowing those little things, that's just a football player. He's been doing this for a long time.
Do you think, and I want to ask you this even, and I know your answer is, well, I don't know, I'm not in his head, but given that he probably should have thrown the ball on one of those plays you said to somebody else, do you feel like having A.J. Brown there would make him make throws that ordinarily he would not make? Because he's not a guy who turns the ball over a whole lot. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way. But he did throw some balls to A.J. Brown. I didn't think the Steelers' coverage was bad.
No, it wasn't bad on the 2 touchdowns on the right sideline.
Right.
I would say for most quarterbacks, that's absolutely the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, there's no question when you feel that you have a great receiver who's going to win at the catch point or
Mm-hmm.
make contested catches, you're more than willing to throw him the ball without
Right.
question.
Right.
Jeff,
Especially if there's a one-on-one situation.
Yes.
Because A.J. Brown is sworn, and it's on record that he's not, if you throw me the ball, it's either I catch it or it's going to be incomplete, right? And those are the things, that's the mindset that you have to have as a receiver. And if the quarterback knows that, as long as you're one-on-one, it's either going to be a touchdown, catch, or incomplete, we're fine.
Right.
did you have late hands, though?
Late hands?
Yeah.
I wasn't fast enough to have late hands.
Just admit it. Because he has some super late hands, and he never gets called.
Yeah.
It's amazing the little nudge he gives. We talked about this in May. Jeff and I were at OTAs, and Slay's standing right there. There's no way this ball should be caught. And he went like this. And he caught it. I'm like, wait a minute. How did he do that?
Yeah, usually late hands is when you got a guy by a step and you're trying to wait for the ball to come down and you're late. I never had that much of a step.
3rd and 6 on a quick out versus off coverage is not necessary. Not late hands.
There's times where you show your hands, you try to catch everybody, but yeah.
You know, it's funny, to play off what Jay said about Brown, to me, he's a fascinating guy to watch because when I watch him, I don't think that his movements are sudden, but yet there's an explosive way in which his body moves. But he's not, there are certain receivers that you just watch him and they're so twitchy in the way they move. You go, wow, that guy is really sudden.
Yeah.
He's not like that. But my guess is if you're playing against him, and obviously I'm not out there, but this is just from years of watching tape. My guess is if you're playing against him, he's quicker than you think he is.
Definitely.
Right. And maybe even a little stronger, too.
Well,
with the way
that-
he
that-
moves.
The play strength is
strong-
ridiculous.
the strong
But
part,
that's
yeah.
the thing. The strong with the speed and the quickness, that combination is just too much because all it takes is just a nudge, and now this guy has you off balance and he's running full speed still.
Now, go ahead.
I just say, Greg, one more question. So, you watched all of A.J. Brown snaps in Tennessee. How are they using him differently here, comparatively?
Well, Tennessee, he was predominantly the boundary X. Okay, so he lined up as the single receiver to the short side of the field. And when you're the boundary X, what they did a lot with him, because the pass games are different, they threw a lot of slants to him, and he's so physical inside catching the ball. You know, one of the things, and the term that a lot of people use, and you use it when you're watching college players, is he's phenomenal catching through contact and then immediately becoming a runner. You know, that's a lot of guys can catch the ball with contact, but then they're done.
They're in the space.
Then they're done.
Yeah.
He is so good at catching the ball when there's contact and then continuing. And continuing with power and strength. Yeah. And that's a rare trait that he has that not a lot of receivers have.
And what that is it's excellent balance, but it's no fear. When there's fear, there's drifting. When there's drifting, your body's out of position in order to be balanced, to stay going, to keep moving.
That is such a good point.
You know, so when you don't have fear and you can stay on balance, man, it's a dangerous thing.
I remember Jaws telling me about receivers, and I wish I could remember the specific guys, but about receivers that they knew after 5 minutes when they ran in breaking routes that they were drifters.
Yeah.
Because then they drift away because they don't, and that kills the quarterback. I mean, that for the quarterback.
You mean for contact? They didn't want
you drift away. You drift away for two reasons, right? You drift away. Number one is because you don't trust your hands.
Right.
Ooh. Right. So you're trying to get the perfect catch, right? And the other thing too, when it comes to like just drifting in general, you're not as competitive, and that's the thing we talked about earlier. How competitive you are, right? Because you have to like when the ball is in the air, you have to go down negative. We talk about run negative in order to get the ball, and usually doing that, you're competing with somebody for that ball. You're drifting, you're letting the guy get in between. Quarterback's gonna hate your guts.
Oh no, I remember Joe telling me that pretty early when we started working together about receivers that drift. Yeah. And sometimes you can see that with college receivers. Like, I remember one guy, and he was super talented. You may remember him. He came from Florida, Chad Jackson.
Yeah, I
remember that receiver? Second-round pick for the Patriots, who they overdraft because he could run in a straight line.
But he was one of those guys. He had a big body, and he could run fast. Yeah. But he didn't really want to.
Combine warrior.
He didn't want to deal with the middle of the field.
Oh.
Funny story.
Go ahead.
Brian Dable and Josh McDaniels came to Michigan and worked me out. I had a broken hand, caught everything. They were throwing like howitzers at me, right? Caught everything. They're like, dude, want to draft you, right? Right. He's like, dude, Bill, and I saw him, later in that year. We played him in a preseason game. He's like, well, Bill wanted Chad Jackson. And he's like, every like 3 or 4 years or so will go by, and he'll see Avant, make a play. Freaking Chad Jackson.
Who said that?
Dable and McDaniels always tell.
That's a great story.
Chad Jackson.
That's a great story.
He was one, but he was a workout warrior, and he was
built,
man.
Yeah. Straight line speed is all he had.
Every time I see Dable, he tells me that story. I tell
great.
Him, freaking Chad Jackson, the Avant's out there.
Could have been you.
That'll be my password when I talk to him and say, Coach, Chad Jackson.
I don't know if you would have liked New England. I mean, what slot receiver has ever excelled in New England?
Oh, my God. Surprised they never signed you over the years.
Oh, my gosh, huh?
Surprised they never looked to sign you when you were a free agent.
Oh, it's all good. I only free agent one time, so.
That's true.
I signed early. Well, I signed early.
Yeah. All right, well, to put the whole A.J. Brown conversation in a little bit of historical perspective, right now, A.J. Brown is on pace to have exactly 1,400 yards in 17 games and 11 touchdowns. That would give him the second best, make him the second best single season receiver for the Eagles in their history, right behind Mike Quick, who had 1,409 in 1983.
So
and a different era.
And I guarantee if Quick were here, he would say, I did it in 16 games. Though.
Well, and also he did it in a different era.
Right. In a different era. Yeah.
And also the thing with Quick, because he had the bad injury, is that was at a time when injuries, they couldn't fix things the way they do now.
Sure.
Because that kind of ended his career, which was a shame, because he was great.
This is my take from a newer school guy. The old school guys had it much harder. And that's just, I know how it is, just being in college and having a guy being able to interfere with you until the ball is thrown.
Exactly.
Right. Guys, do you know how much harder that is? It's extremely hard. I remember being mad about the rule changing after 5 yards. Because that hurts me. You know, because I can be physical all the way down the
you can be
field, and I
physical.
was built for that.
Yeah.
And now these guys that can't release
No,
it all can
no.
just run around, you know. So
And
well,
that was
those
back
guys
in the
had
day
it.
too, where you could hit receivers going across
yeah,
the
hit
middle.
across, yeah.
Essentially
You could
now,
mug 'em.
the way the rule translates practically, and again, if there's, if Dean Blandino was here, he'd probably say something else.
Yeah.
But the way the rule practically translates is you almost have to let a guy catch the ball and come down.
Yeah.
Because if you have about this much space to hit him, that I think it would be considered legal.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, definitely a different time.
No doubt.
Yeah, definitely. Different.
So since you guys asked, number 2 on the list for a best single season is Deshaun Jackson with 1,332
Chip, right?
yards.
That was the Chips
Yes,
last. That was
and
his
then he
last
got
year.
released.
Yep.
And then number 3 was Jeremy Maclin with
Wow.
1318. Number 4 is Irving Fryer in 97 with 1316. Number 5,
T.O.
good old Ben Hawkins. Wait a minute. Yeah, no, because remember, T.O. got hurt. And he missed the last 5 games. Yeah. So he didn't compile
Ben Hawkins.
for the single season
Yeah.
that he did. Really interesting stuff, though. For Eagles receivers throughout the history. I mean, A.J. Brown really stands to be, as Adam said earlier this week on the podcast, if he remains an Eagle for quite a while,
he's healthy,
he could be one of the best to ever play.
I just know the way the Titans felt about him, and they were heartbroken that trade was made. And as Greg could attest, they're a tough watch on offense, other than the running back.
They are.
They are. That passing game, they don't have one, but anyway. That's all they do. They do what they can. They won 5 in a row.
I know.
Well, the resurgence of the Eagles' downfield offense comes at maybe a pretty good time. They play tonight a Texans defense that A, has struggled, and B, as you guys mentioned, they'll play a lot of 2-deep coverages, safeties. But again, I sort of want to go back into what you guys said. When people think of Lovie Smith, they think of that Bears defense that somehow got Rex Grossman to a Super Bowl, right? The 2-deep coverages, all the talent that they had. But for sound of it, they're not that defense right now. I'll start with you, Craig. I mean, you see.
In terms of talent, you mean?
No, well, talent and principle. They don't just purely play
But
cover 2.
that's still, relative to the rest of the NFL, they play a high percentage of cover 2. They may not be number 1 in the percentage, but relative to the rest of the league, they play a high percentage of cover 2.
Okay.
They're a zone-based defense because the next is cover 3.
Right.
Now, everybody plays man situationally, so it's not as if they never play cover 1. Of course they do.
Sure.
Everybody has to at some point.
Right.
But that's not their foundation. They're a zone-based defense, and they're a predominant 4-man D-line rush defense.
Okay.
Now, every once in a while, they'll rush 5. That's rare. What they will do is they'll do what I call a zone exchange concept, where they'll still rush 4, but the fourth they'll drop out a lineman, and the fourth rusher could be a safety or a linebacker. So it's still a 4-man rush. And
So it's not a zone blitz because it's just a 4-man rush?
It's a 4-man rush, so it's a
Okay.
zone exchange principle. It's
I
a
gotcha.
4-man
So
zone
one guy's dropped,
exchange.
the other comes in.
So
Okay.
somebody drops out, and normally when a D lineman drops out, you're playing zone because
Right.
he's not going to cover a good
That much
receiving
area.
running back. You know, so man to man that is.
How do you
So-
attack this style of defense, Jason? If you're the Eagles.
Run it. Miles Sanders, and the offensive line, you got to run it and establish that first and try to get them out of their cover 2. Which is unlikely, but if you run it and you gas them, that's one way to do it. Over and under and take your shots. A lot of teams, because the way cover two is constructed, usually by the time the guys get down after they're jammed and rerouted and things like that, the pass rush is home. If those guys can manipulate their way down the field from the slot in particular, line A.J. Brown up in the slot, get him on a one-on-one with the safety. That's the type of thing that you want if you want to complete a shot down the field.
Well-
But over and unders in the middle of the field,
Right.
and then shots from the slot.
And
Yeah.
you also know, we mentioned this briefly last week in regard to something else, but in cover 2, there's a middle hole defender, and it's usually Kirksey,
Yeah.
and he's going to drop, and they don't drop straight. They open to one side or the other, and they almost always open to speed or the field. Almost always it's the same thing. It doesn't have to be. So you can beat it on the back side with combination routes.
Right.
So and all this going in
Sure.
because this is,
Sure.
it's on tape.
So to Jason's point, teams have ran the ball very well against the Texans, given that style. They have the worst run defense in the league. They allow 186 yards
Wow, that's a
per
lot of
game
yards.
on the
It is.
ground.
It's hard to believe.
I know, that's a lot of yards on the ground. I
Listen,
knew that, obviously, but just hearing you say that number,
that's amazing.
that's a lot of yards.
I can tell you 5 people who would agree with you on that, and that's Derrick Henry, who had 219 yards against them earlier. Jonathan Taylor had 161 yards. Khalil Herbert, who's a nice running back, but you don't kind of consider him a guy who's going to get 157 yards and average 7.9 yards per carry. Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs also gone for over 140 on him.
Josh Jacobs had his best game as a professional. He had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
if the game was even closer, he might have had 300 yards. It was crazy.
Right, so this is why I like to come to you in this situation, because you're steadfast. Well, the Eagles have been passing in the first half. They're sure a passing team. Do they deviate, or do they just heavy run?
That's, to me, the question of the game. How did the Eagles come out? We all predicted, or at least some of us did, we thought they'd come out throwing, and they did, based on the matchup.
Right.
Here, the matchup tells you that, and based on the numbers, that if you come out running, you'll be successful. But then if they start moving safeties up, go deep.
Right.
So I think you take what they give you, but I don't want you to start hiding the quarterback. Hurts is throwing the ball, by the way, as a deep throw is grown significantly. And Greg, you were talking about Petrie, who's not quite a safety. Has he played okay overall?
He shows up a lot on tape, but I think he's almost a positionless type player.
That could be a good or bad thing.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, usually that's a good thing, but the way you're saying it is not.
Well, and it's interesting. None of us will know the answer to this until they play the game, so we're just talking football now.
Yep.
The other philosophy is that you come out throwing and you try to get up, 17-0, 20-0, whatever it is, because then you let the dogs loose, and their O-line is not very good in pass protection. And the quarterback, while I think Davis Mills, and we'll get to him, has some very positive traits and could end up being a pretty good player, he's essentially a pocket quarterback. And one of the issues he has now is he's not a very good pocket mover yet, so he gets stuck sometimes. So you could think, okay, let's get ahead, and then we go after him, and it could be one of those 7-8 sack games too. So
there's a couple ways you can do it.
A couple of ways.
Well, usually that's the Eagles, game plan in general.
Right.
Most teams have to throw the ball against the Eagles because they're down.
Right.
So I think we can make 6-7 mistakes offensively and still figure it out whether we decide to pass it or run it or whatever else. We can make.
By the way,
this is a game where there's a lot of mistakes that could happen.
When you throw
and
it,
we can overcome.
I would assume Steven Nelson will have a bullseye. On the back.
I would think.
That's the guy you go after, however you want to isolate
if they're in man.
If they're in man,
right.
Or even if it's really way off and you can kind of shorten the route.
Well, cover two, it kind of helps you out with Steven Nelson, because Steven Nelson is a physical player for the most part, and rerouting people in zone, he can do that.
He can do that.
Yeah.
And he's also, if it's cover 2, he's not responsible for deep routes.
Right.
His job is just to beat him up, beat the guy up in front of him.
All right. I wanted to get back to Derek Stingley in a second. First, we're going to pause real quick to hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, we want to thank our friends at Sky Motor Cars, and if you hop out there to Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. If you can't make it, SkyMotorCars.com.
And as N'Kobe Dean did recently.
Yes, he
got
did.
He got his car at Sky Motor Cars.
All right, Jason is grooving. You
Oh,
wish you were
Sheila,
going
I
up
can hear it
against
in
the
the
Texans.
background. I wish I could.
I thought you were just dreaming about going up
No,
against
I
the
was
Texas
listening.
secondary.
I'm not worrying about that. I'm just thinking about Sheila going up. No.
Oh, Sheila, ready for the world?
That's a great tune. That's a good 80s tune
remember
right
that
there,
one.
Sheila. Sorry, I was sort of surprised. I knew how good of a cornerback Derek Stingley was in college, but I think I even said I'd be shocked if they took a corner 4th overall. Was it 3rd overall or 4th overall? I think it was 3rd overall, because of the style of defense Lovie Smith was used to. It was front four rush.
It's an interesting question.
And not necessarily the most talented guys at corner, but big, strong, physical. I don't think Peanut Tillman was a first or a second round pick. I think he was a lower pick.
No. Yeah, him, Tim Jennings, none of those guys were high picks.
Yeah, they passed on Kayvon Thibodeau, and again, maybe they didn't like Kayvon Thibodeau. So I don't know. I don't want to criticize them. I'm just saying I thought it was a very interesting mismatch of philosophy or player to scheme when they picked a guy considered a man corner for a scheme that we thought was going to be cover two.
It is interesting, and it's obviously a discussion point.
Yeah.
Lovey is a zone player. Now, obviously, in cover 3, you're going to play essentially, it just becomes a technique issue, but in cover 3, you're going to match up on the outside.
Right.
But in cover 2, your corners are not really match-up players at all. In fact, Tony Dungy used to believe that in cover 2, maybe this was back in the day when they could hit people, that your safeties were more important players than your corners in cover 2.
Yeah.
Because of the way, as routes develop, your safeties become much more of a factor. People might not be aware of this, but cover 2's genesis is as a run defense, not as a pass defense. It started with Bud Carson when he was the head coach at Georgia Tech in the late 60s, and he wanted to defend the option. So he wanted to create a defense where he could get more players on the line of scrimmage to defend the run. So essentially, cover 2 became a 9-man box because your 2 corners were on the ball defenders.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how it
No
started.
wonder that defense, the steel curtain. He
And
was
then,
the architect
he
of the steel
became
curtain, right?
the steel curtain,
Yep.
and they had a unique player in Jack Lambert, who was 215 and probably 205 by the time the season got it through its halfway point, and Lambert was a superior athlete. He could play today at that position because he was such a great athlete.
He was a tough SOB. Oh,
and
right, he's in the Hall of Fame.
so he could be a cover 2 guy because he could play the middle of the field. But cover 2, your corners are not really true pass defenders in a strict sense.
Right. In a strict
When you
sense.
think
No,
about covering
it's
wide receivers down the field.
It's evolved.
Like there's a lot of times they can be responsible for the outside gap.
Right.
And when you see a run look, you see a lot of those guys. I remember Antoine Winfield, guys like that were really good at it. Looking at it, knowing that there was a run, and they would beat the receiver and whoever else there to the D gap.
Right.
But when you have a predictable cover 2, and as you guys were saying, you kind of know what Lovey does, isn't there a way to get a guy like Nelson? Is there a way to exploit him in coverage?
Well, there's always a way but it has to be a concept.
Right,
It's
it's
not
a
a one-on-one
Sure, right.
situation, right?
Yeah.
You have to have a guy to hold a hook player in order to isolate him. So there's a hook defender, a hook outside linebacker that's there to protect him, or nickel, or whatever it is, there to protect him. You got to run something in front of his face in order to occupy him, in order to get a one-on-one out there for him, right? So it's a tough situation.
Every zone has voids, or else
Yeah.
everybody would play the same zone.
Yep.
And so you're trying to get into voids, and you're trying to put back-end players in conflict because there's gray areas in zone. So you're trying to exploit the gray areas, and you're trying to get into space. That's
Yeah.
basically what you're trying to do when you play against zone.
Right.
Whatever zone it is.
Yeah, and another way to exploit him is to send someone in front of his face to get a one behind him.
Right. A high-low.
Right, yeah, high-low and cover 2, and that depends on how good the safety is too. So it's kind of hard to isolate him.
Sure. The only sort of thing that made sense to me, I guess, was that their general manager, whose name is escaping me right now, from the Patriots, the guy running the
Nick
Texans.
Caserio.
Nick Caserio.
Nick Caserio,
Yes.
that's obviously an organization that places a lot of emphasis on defensive backs, so
Yeah.
maybe they fell in love.
Right.
How would you compare, and I get it, I'll say it right off the bat, it's not fair because they're in different schemes and different teams, and one team's doing well, the other's not, but how would you compare what you've seen from Sauce Gardner this year, who a lot of people felt would go higher than Stingley, to what you've seen from Stingley? Is it even fair?
No, look, Stingley has great corner traits, which I think you would agree
Yes.
with. I really like Sauce Gardner too. I mean, for me, it was a tough call when I watched their college tape.
Okay.
I probably would have picked Gardner just a notch above. Many would have picked Stingley. I get that. I'm not saying I'm right. That's the way I saw it. Maybe Jay likes Stingley more, and
Just because of the competition.
Right.
That's the only way
Right.
I would have said.
Right.
I
So
said it
that's-
that simple, yeah.
But Stingley has clear man-to-man traits,
Right.
as does Sauce Gardner.
Gotcha.
I think with Gardner this year, because I've seen probably every Jets game, because I actually like watching their defense. It's pretty good. I think what's really been impressive to me about Gardner is how well he's done as a zone player, because he did not do much of that in college.
Right.
He was the boundary corner, and the boundary in college is much tighter,
Sure.
and he played press man.
Yeah.
And he did not play a ton of zone at Cincinnati. Not in his last 2 years anyway.
That guy's a stud. I just think he's a stud. That's my unexpert opinion.
Yeah.
Sauce Gardner, stud.
You're probably right about that.
There are actually teams that Jeff and I talked to before the draft that had Gardner as the #1 player on the board.
Yeah,
That's
I like
how good-
Gardner. I
how
like Gardner.
Special they thought
You,
he
you
could
get a
be.
lot of balls playing in the boundary in college.
Yeah.
Such a short throw for the quarterback
Yeah.
that can't make that throw to the field.
Right.
In fact, isn't the corner who started opposite him, whose name is Kobe Bryant at
He's the
Cincinnati?
slot corner for
Rams.
Seattle.
Is he
started.
playing well?
That-
Seattle, right?
Yeah.
He's their slot corner.
Yeah.
Defensive
Nice.
back coach needs a upgrade there.
All right. When we come back, we got a lot to talk about. We're going to go into hour 2 of the show, but first we got a break to hear from our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook.
Game night for me is every night. At the place where I meet up with the guys, grab a cold one, and watch the big game on the big screen. So whether it's the money line, the pass line, or a parlay, I'm in it to win. This is my city, and this is my place.
To our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook here on Delaware Ave. It is packed out there. People are coming in. They are so geared up for tonight's Eagles game and the history that the Eagles are chasing, and of course, Phillies in the World Series. The music's on. Jason was dancing, so that's how you know it's a great
Phillies
game.
jerseys out there, which is kind of cool. The
Tons
dealers
of
are wearing
Phillies.
the Phillies jerseys.
Got a
Absolutely.
beautiful night for a game too here in
Yeah.
Philly.
Great night here in South Philly, and I'm sure it's a nice, balmy, humid night in Houston like it is
the
every
roof
single
be
night.
off there?
The roof will be up. I don't know, will it? Is it
don't know.
retractable?
Oh, yeah.
Ah, I forgot about that. All right, interesting. Also interesting, the Eagles are favored yet again. They have been favored in all 8 games that they have played this year. This one, though, hold on to your hats. Favored by 14.
On the road.
It might be down to 13 and a
13.5
half,
to
but
14,
either
yeah.
last time I checked.
The
Eagles
Brandon
favored
Cooks.
by 13 and a half
I'm ta-
on the road.
They're gonna make that.
You think so?
Yeah.
Vegas
No
really
Cooks.
wants you to take that, too.
No Cooks or you're playing 2 backup
It
receivers.
almost seems like way too set up for the romp that's just not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm going to the sports book after we talk.
all right. Hey,
You had a bad feeling
can
last
do
week
that.
too, and it worked out okay.
it's just a little iffy feeling. I still pick the Eagles to win.
All right.
And cover. Just a little iffiness. We're the only ones to pick against the Eagles this year, and we paid the price dearly. And that was earlier this
Oh,
year.
the Washington game.
The
No,
Washington
Hey,
game, yeah.
I think
I'll
I
pick
picked
against
Minnesota.
them. I'll
No, that's
pick
right. It was
Oh,
a Minnesota
Minnesota,
game. We
like-
both picked Minnesota.
That was
I'll pick
strange.
against them in week 17.
You are in week 7. How brave. All right, if you are going to place a bet, make sure you're doing it here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook or on the Bet Rivers app, or however Jason does it, follow him. He's going to he's
Going
confident.
over there.
All right, when you're playing against a team, Jay, I'm glad you made that comment because I really wanted to ask you.
I'm definitely going over.
When you're playing against a team that is theoretically as undermanned and for lack of a better term, just as not as talented as you are, how do you kind of keep your focus and not take that same kind of approach on the field?
So I have a different mentality right now. I'm so far removed from the game.
No, I meant
just
when you
look at
played,
it.
though.
When I play, you don't underestimate anyone.
Okay.
You always say that they have an NFL team, NFL roster, and the guys that are on their team deserve to be in the NFL, and they're there for a reason. So you respect them like that.
Right.
And
But
you
come on, there's got to be a realism when you know a team's starting 9 rookies that they
very,
are.
very rarely do you just have your way with a team.
Okay.
Very, very
Today's
rarely.
NFL,
Very
especially.
rarely
Yeah.
you just have your way and just do what you want.
That's true.
The only team that I've seen do that consistently was that Patriots team that was almost 17, that almost won all the games.
Right.
Right.
They finished 17-0 for the year, but lost to the Giants. That was the only team that I've ever seen dominate other NFL football teams consistently.
Yeah, and to
Yeah.
your point, by the way, the Texans are 1-5-1. So of their 5 losses, 3 have come by 1 possession, and only one of them was a true blowout. There was
Yeah.
also a 10-point loss, which I think was close until the end. So to your point, they are.
Raider game, yeah.
They're giving the Raiders blew them out. They're giving most teams a game, but when you look at those teams that they got a game from, those teams are also not doing very well
No,
this year
you're right.
either. So
Yeah.
it's really hard to kind of get a perspective on that. But you still think blowout?
I do.
I think blowout from this seat.
Yeah.
If I was in the locker room, I wouldn't be thinking about a
Yeah,
blowout.
by the way, when you watch the tape, because I think you've talked about this before, the coaches will try to make them maybe better than they are. But
Yeah.
will you start? So how do you keep that out of your mind when you're preparing? That okay, they don't look great on tape, but how do you respect the team? Oh, they're an NFL team. I got to respect them.
Yeah, it's an NFL team. You got to respect them. You're just trying to exploit a weakness within their game. But the coaches are going to build those guys up like world beaters by the time you're done. They're going to find every reason why they're, oh, they should have won this game and this bonehead play or this, that, and the other. They're going to figure out a way in order to make those guys like, the 72 Dolphins by the time you get done playing, you get done with practice.
Speaking of the 72 Dolphins, that's Trey Thomas's favorite
Yes.
team now because he's been saying the Eagles will be following in their footsteps since week 2. But I researched a stat today. I was totally not expecting to get the answer that I came up with. But do you know that the last 12 teams that have started off 7-0, none of them have won the Super Bowl?
Didn't the Cardinals start 7-0
Last year. Who remembers that the Arizona Cardinals started off 7-0? And how about this? 2 years ago, the Pittsburgh Steelers started off 11-0.
I remember that.
And they lost in the wild card round.
Right.
So we got a long way to go here, right? 7-0. It
it's
sounds
long.
great right now, but
It is.
Well, it is pretty great right now.
it is pretty great.
Because they
right
haven't
now.
lost.
But you know what? I bet you the Cardinals were feeling that way last year at this time too.
Yeah, I think our roster is a lot
It
different.
is. It is
Yeah.
better. I think it's markedly better.
One thing before we move on, Jay, do you notice that they seem like a confident team but respectful? Some teams are a little cocky. You wonder how they'll handle success. They seem so far to handle success well.
They're handling it good. They're having fun. And some of those
Oh, yeah.
teams think it's cockiness, and I'm
Right.
pretty sure they're pissed off. When you start.
like when Kelsey's wearing a Batman mask. in the
Yeah,
middle of the
Batman
game.
mask. It's starting to get a little bit theatrical, right? A little bit of theater out there, especially when you catch touchdown, you point to 1, 2, that type of
Right,
stuff.
right.
That right there gets you, get the other team worked up. That would be a bulletin board point for the next defensive back room. Like, hey, don't let these dudes do this to you. I remember playing the Steelers one time when the referees were on strike. And they played the Jets. When I say they were literally grabbing and arm barring and body slamming the Jets receivers, and we made it a point, dude. If anybody touch you, you still on them. You throw a punch at them.
Right.
Because the referees wasn't going to call it anyway,
Right.
but we weren't going to get punked like the Jets were.
Right.
So when you see those types of things on tape, it kind of makes you mad.
All right. Well, we'll see if the Houston Texans are got a little things that they've seen on tape and got a little stuff for the Eagles tonight. I want to talk about the man in the middle that the Eagles won't have. We mentioned it earlier. They're going to be without Jordan Davis. It's going to be several weeks. And this is significant for the Eagles because literally the fronts that they played first, second down have been largely because the way it's constructed this year because of what he's able to do at the nose position. And as I mentioned, they don't have another 350-pound guy who does what he does. So
Most teams don't.
no, most teams don't. Right.
I
Greg,
think you're correct.
Greg, we know that last year they did play 5-man fronts, looked a little bit different than what they're doing this year. How do you suspect they might try to look without Jordan Davis?
Well, just so to be clear, they play that particular 5-man front,
Right.
in run defense situations,
Correct.
normal down and distance situations.
Right.
Because Davis does not play in what you would call the pass nickel.
Sure.
Okay. And he's either a zero technique or a no shade. That's how he lines up.
Right.
My guess is that you'll see Hargrave move into that spot, and you'll see Milton Williams get snaps in Hargrave's spot.
Okay.
That would be my guess. Now, until we see it, I don't know. You may have a different feeling about that, but that would be my guess.
This may not be a popular take. The Eagles are 15th against the rush, like 15th in the league. That's not the great. That's right in the middle of the pack.
Right.
We always laud Jordan Davis as the best run stopper and those types of things, but our defense doesn't stop the run that great.
No.
5.1 yards a carry that other teams are averaging against them. So
Fourth worst in the league, by the way.
I don't think that us losing Jordan Davis is that big of a deal.
See, I'm so glad you said that because.
So that's my hard take.
But the tape shows that. See,
Right.
Davis makes 2 or 3 plays a game that are really good, where you go, wow, that's really good. But there's also a lot of plays he gets moved. And when the team does pass, when he's in the game, he cannot rush the quarterback at this point in his career at all. Mm-hmm. And he can't play many snaps in a row. He's not at that point yet. When he starts to get to 3 or 4 snaps in a row, which they normally don't do, and they don't do it for a reason, because the few times he's done it, I've made a note of this watching the tape. By the fourth snap, he's beat. He just stands up at the snap of the ball, and he's done.
Right.
You can be super strong, three-weight, 350 pounds. If you stand right up, you're done.
Right.
Low man wins.
Adam, isn't that some of the...
That's what
I
the tape
agree.
shows.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
that's
agree.
what we're talking about. That's what the tape shows.
Isn't that some of the feedback we've been getting on Jordan Davis is that while he's making progress, it's not like he was going to play drastically more by the end of the year.
We talked about this. Remember week 1 where he didn't play a lot? People were like, oh my, what is going on?
Right.
We're like, hang on here. A, his weight. B, stamina. Technique also.
Everything.
Mike Zimmer told me if you don't have the right technique, you don't stay on the field for very long.
Right.
Okay, this is the way he coached defensive linemen. And he's got to learn how to play at this level. Now, he'll have in the spring, he'll get in better shape. He'll work on it. He's probably going to be a starter next year.
Well, it's funny you say that. A couple of things that I respond. He went to Georgia. I've never been to Athens. My guess is their facilities are pretty good. That would be my guess.
Yes.
So he spent 3 years there?
4, I think.
4?
He was there, yeah. I thought.
So, and again, this is no knock on what the tape shows.
I know what you're saying.
But if he wasn't in great shape at the University of Georgia, isn't that a red flag?
Well, they traded up for him, and they apparently thought
He may become a great player.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff teams should be doing with their due diligence. The Eagles obviously really liked him, but we all know that they did not trade up to get him at the 13th pick to play 20 snaps a game.
Your point is it's a dangerous
in a run defense,
right.
in a league that's a passing league.
If he's not starting next year, there's a problem. That's the way
I was told by someone who absolutely knows that at this point, even without the injury, he could not play more snaps. Right now.
Right now.
His body couldn't handle
They were playing the maximum number of snaps.
He could not play more
so
snaps.
So low 20s, 20 to 20.
Right.
I think what you're saying is, and I think it's very fair.
And that's a tough proposition for someone that's drafted really high.
Yeah, and it's a risky.
traded up for it,
It's a risky. We do this a lot. Oh, this guy will be better by next year because he's a year older. Or he's going to be in the weight room. But it's a risky
they
assumption.
Obviously
I think that's
they
fair.
believe so, or they wouldn't have made the trade. They
Sure.
believe so. I don't want to say they hope so. They believe so.
Right.
Because at some point, Fletcher Cox is gone. As Adam just said, maybe he never plays 70 snaps a game, but they certainly want him to be playing 45, 50 snaps a game.
Sure.
Right?
Next year, he's probably going to need to.
Yeah.
Because Hargrave's contract's up.
Right. He might not even be here.
Right. So hear me out though on the 5-man look because I thought about it myself and I remember what they did last year.
Right.
Which was basically they had Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox inside. Brandon Graham got hurt, so the outside guys would bound up being Josh Sweat and Derek Barnett, and they would use Jannard Avery. Again, first down, run defense we're talking about.
That's all we're talking about.
And then once they stop the run, Jannard Avery off the field, they're in their normal nickel.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe without Jordan Davis, you'll see something similar to that where Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat on the outsides, Hargrave and Cox inside, and then Hassan Reddick is your quote-unquote Jannard Avery, but he stays on the field in the nickel. And then one of those 4 guys I mentioned earlier, the down lineman, maybe Brandon Graham because he can't play a full game. Maybe he comes off in certain packages, and the next time it's somebody else.
And they could also change the front look in their base run to where instead of a 0 and a 1 technique, they make that player, whoever it's going to be, a little more of a gap player and make him what we call a 2-eye, where he moves a little closer to the guard and he becomes more of a gap player as opposed to trying to just hand fight the center and beat him. There's a lot of ways to go, but Hargrave has played that position before.
For Pittsburgh, right?
And with the Eagles last
year.
year.
Yeah. So the bigger point here is that they don't change everything schematically. They still need to be, for what you said especially, a 5-man front because if they were to go to a 4-3, I think that would not be conducive to what Jonathan Gannon wants to accomplish.
And also tonight they're playing a team that lines up a lot with multiple tight ends. So they're going to play. They do anyway, even when their receivers are healthy. But they will tonight.
Well, they only have 4 receivers. Jalen Camp is the kid they signed off the practice squad. He was drafted by the Jaguars last year, cut. So he'll be their 4th receiver. And they also are going to dress 4 tight ends tonight.
Right, so they're going to play with multiple tight ends because they can.
12.
Because Akins and Brevin Jordan can also detach from the formation, so they're going to play with multiple tight ends.
Right.
So now it's just a down and distance deal. They might play with multiple tight ends on 3rd and 9 simply because it might be their best receiving group. But on 1st down, they will play with multiple tight ends, and the Eagles will play the 5-man run defense front.
Sure. To get back to your point on Jordan Davis, in that he's not as significant as a loss as people might think because of the limited impact he's been able to have on a game. You're hoping by next year he can play more snaps, he can be in a better physical shape. But I think you brought this up as soon as they drafted him. They did not draft him just to even do that. Eventually, he's going to need to be a 3-down, a guy who can play in your nickel. And now you even seem that much further away from that.
You're getting into philosophies, but my guess is pretty much every team in the league would argue that if a defensive tackle is solely a run defender and is not going to be a pass rusher and play in your sub fronts, that guy is not a top 15 pick.
Right.
If that's all you see him doing career-wise, then he's not a top 15 pick. Would you agree with that?
I agree wholeheartedly.
Right. So Davis was not drafted to play 20 snaps in a run front.
Correct.
They knew he would do that this year. But he was not drafted to do that.
And 2 or 3 special plays a game is not also why they drafted him.
No.
The traits, yes, but you need a more complete player. Patience is going to have to be shown here because he's got a ways to go.
All right. Well, we talked a little bit about the Eagles and their run defense.
I think we got to talk about, they did some interesting things with their pass front this week. They showed some new looks.
Yes.
And I think, that was
definitely get
really
into that.
good.
Definitely. I wanted to highlight a little bit, though, what Jason mentioned. They're allowing 5.1 yards per carry. It's 4th worst in the NFL. Adam, I know you talk to a lot of coaches, though, and they'll say when you're winning, when you're getting ahead. And Nick Sirianni,
he said it too.
I'll tell you that he's right about this pass game in that the Steelers did not run the ball well in the first half.
When it matters.
They got most of their big runs in the second half. We have seen times this year in first halves of game or when it's close or even
the Lions.
The way Dallas got back into the game where they have been able to run against the Eagles.
But again, they were down big, and Greg, or you guys could say, maybe they played or maybe they played a lot of nickel, then really backed off. And and Dallas did run the ball well in the 3rd quarter, but the Eagles were up they were up by so many points.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah,
It's like the Buffalo-Green Bay game the other night on Sunday night. Buffalo gets up big, and not that they're saying, okay, we want them to gain 8 or 9 yards, but the point is, if a team at that point wants to run the ball and eat a lot of clock,
you want them to. Go ahead.
You're kind of saying, okay, 6 yards is okay. I mean, that's
with
not
Aaron
going to kill
Rodgers
us.
and you're running the ball, that was shocking.
Right.
Shocking.
Well, the Texans do have a rushing weapon. He's a rookie. He was actually a 4th-round pick. His name is Dameon Pierce. I think most NFL fans are starting to become familiar with who he is. He went to the University of Florida. He is the NFL's 12th leading rusher right now. Man, that doesn't sound great, but he didn't get a lot of carries the first 2 weeks. They eased him in. He went through a 3-week span where he rushed for 322 yards, including 131 in a game against the Chargers. He's averaging 4.5 yards per carry. Yeah. So he is starting to get on the NFL radar as one of the better young running backs. Greg, I'll ask you first with Dameon Pierce. Tell me what the tape shows on him.
I like Pierce a lot. I mean, I would say he's a good combination, a desirable combination of patient yet decisive. He's very strong. He's got really good contact balance. He can stop and start. He can re-accelerate. If you're going to run in the NFL and be a foundation runner, which is essentially what he's now become for them, then you have to be able to work in confined space. This is not the college game where everything is spread out and offensive line. Of course, Michigan doesn't play this way, but we're in the college game where the offensive linemen have really wide splits and you got light boxes and there's gaping holes. That's not the NFL game. So you have to be able to function in confined space. And in confined space, there's a couple of traits you must have. Number one, you must be laterally agile because you have to be able to avoid, in a tight space. You also have to be strong. You have to have contact balance because there'll be hands and bodies on you. And if you go down, you're done. And then because you can't just go through at a fast speed, you have to be able to re-accelerate. You have to be able to sort of stop a little bit or slow down, but then burst.
Gotcha.
And he can do all those things. He's a really kind of a complete, and he has great finishing traits. This guy is physical. He gets hard yards. He does not go down easy.
Jason, does it remind you of anybody? I mean, does he kind of have a comp there for you?
Yeah, I don't have a comp in my mind. Young players, I don't like to do that to them. But
fair enough.
I will say that from what I've seen on tape, that I think that he runs the ball extremely hard. He has 3 touchdowns this year. And I think that they have to depend on him because bad offensive line, Davis Mills, who's like running into sack. sacks. So at times, like, you know, with just bad presence in the pocket where he's not realizing where defenders are, those types of things. And I think that he has to carry the team almost. The run game has to carry the team.
Adam, why was your 4th round pick?
Speed. He wasn't the fastest guy, but man, we were able to see him in Senior Bowl week and preseason. I was like, this guy, he does jump off. Like, I know he's not fast, but he runs with some velocity.
Right.
Yep.
I like the way he moves. He's stop and start guy, as Greg said. He's a fun guy to watch.
He also didn't have many carries in college.
Okay.
I think there was a sense that he was a compliment, which, you know, we'll see what the future holds. I think he has traits to be a guy that can carry 17, 18 times a game, but I don't have numbers in front of me, but I don't think he ever had more than 150 carries in any year at Florida.
Well, he went there sort of at the wrong time, right? Because they were really struggling for his time there. They may have been behind a lot,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. So, you know, there was a sense that what is he in the league? He's a complimentary back. And those guys are not drafted in the 1st or 2nd round.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know? Sure. What were you saying?
No, but Lovie Smith actually, right before the season started, no, right after the season started, but you were talking about his role, which was not a lot in the beginning of the season. He goes, he needs to get the ball more.
Yeah.
Because I guess he looked good when he played, and the reporters said that to him, like, why isn't he playing? He goes, no, I know this. He needs to get the ball more. That was to Pep
good player.
Get him the ball.
What kind of role has Rex Burkhead been playing for this team?
He's
Very sporadic.
Another New England guy.
Yeah, that's why he's
Yeah,
there.
and he plays more on 3rd downs.
Okay.
They had a stretch there where they were a little too predictable when Burkhead was in the game, and I think they realized that when he was in the game, they were throwing the ball. And I think they realized that it became a little too predictable.
Gotcha.
But his snaps have decreased a bit because Pierce's have increased.
Sure, sure. And by the way, to Nick Sirianni's point about where the runs are coming against the Eagles defense, they've only allowed one guy to go over 100 yards this year. That was week 1, DeAndre Swift at 144. Next highest, Ezekiel Elliott at 55. So I think his point is, we'll let people run as long as we're up 20 points.
Yeah, and if you remember,
down.
it was the 2nd or 3rd play of the game against Detroit where Swift gained the 50 yards.
Yeah.
And, you know, long runs like that, there's reasons for them. I remember that play specifically. I can see it in my mind right now. Bradbury had the tackle right there for an 8-yard gain. Do you remember the play?
Bradbury and Chauncey Garner.
Yeah. And then Epps fell down, I believe, on the play.
No, it was Garner Johnson that got washed inside.
Yeah, I mean, Bradbury was sitting right there. He was at the unblocked corner sitting right there. It should have been an 8-yard gain.
Right. All right. Well, we will watch tonight this matchup of Dameon Pierce and what they do to stop him. Now, obviously, the person running the Texans offense, at least from a huddle standpoint, Davis Mills, 2nd-year quarterback. And he's going to go up against an Eagles defense today that has been just absolutely thirsty for takeaways. He has not exactly had the greatest of year, but again, you look at the context and the fact that he won't have weapons around him again tonight. Greg, you had mentioned that the Eagles did some things differently last week. So why don't we get into what Davis Mills might be studying?
I just loved it was the first series. It ended up being the first sack by Reddick. I don't think we'd seen that particular front this year. I don't recall that.
Well, wait, wasn't he lined up almost kind of inside and then looped in over the
Reddick
center?
was inside. He was basically a stand-up 3 technique in their 5-man pass nickel front. And he ended up looping behind, I can't remember the 2 interior guys, but he ended up looping behind in what we call a long stunt.
Right. And we're not a big stunting team.
Now we're
so
not a big
that
stunting
was
team.
Right, that was a surprise.
That both where he lined up and the particular tactic, as soon as I saw that, I happened to see it live too, watching on Sunday, but I saw it, on tape, obviously, when I could watch it 10 times, and I just said, wow, they're showing some different things. See, keep one thing in mind. If you're going to line up in a 5-man front as a pass rush front, a couple of things happen. The first thing that happens is most offensive lines, just by the very nature of the front, have to match up and set to the player right in front of them.
Right.
So you get one-on-ones right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then secondly, if you do stuff inside, stunts inside, if you have a really good edge pass rushers, then the guards cannot help in any way, shape, or form on an edge pass rusher.
Right.
So if you do stuff inside like that, you cause those 3 interior offensive linemen to have to be involved with that, and now you have your wide 9 where Robert Quinn comes in. Now he can rush high side, he can come back inside, he can go any way he wants because there's no one there to help.
Right. So
he should win more.
Well, he's not going to win 90% of the time.
But
yeah.
as the season progresses,
Right.
they do some of that because he could still rush the passer.
No question.
He could win one-on-one.
Yeah.
On a wide.
And the other thing they did a lot of this week, which they've done before, but and again, I don't shard it in the sense of number, but it seemed to me they did a lot more of it, was Fletcher Cox at the wide 9. They did a lot of that this week.
Fletcher Cox on the edges.
On the
playing
edges,
it wide
yes,
out.
yes.
Wow.
Interesting. Sometimes I wonder, and the answer to my question is probably yes, but the coach is never going to say it.
He's done
Oh,
it
yeah,
before,
yeah. Last
but
year
it
he
seemed
did,
like he
yeah.
did a good amount in this game.
Yeah.
That was a game plan.
And
Yeah.
Sweat also played a wide 9 last year. Remember the second half of the season, right? Maybe they may do more of it.
Sometimes I wonder if that kind of play is specifically to attack a weakness in a protection
might
scheme,
be.
or to just get a one-on-one on the outside, and the answer might be both.
Right.
Yeah, that usually special plays like that, alignments, they saw something that they wanted. And the team probably would give them what they want if they line that big guy up out there, which can create a different matchup. Yeah, so that's just chess.
Yeah.
I mean, tonight, look, Tunsil's great, but the right tackle struggles. Titus Howard, he struggles.
Right.
So he's going to have a bullseye on him as far as not only one-on-ones, but maybe if they want to continue with increasing the stunt frequency, I think they would deal with it on the right side of the Titans line. Although they also start a rookie guard on the left side, and
Kenyon Green,
and he's had some struggles.
Yeah.
And so, again, we might see more of this.
This is the game to do it, though.
Yeah.
This is the game to do it. Like I said, this is a game that the coaches know that we have more chances than most weeks because this team is challenged offensively and they have struggles on defense.
Right.
So therefore, you can do something that you're not used to doing, and you have the best passing secondary pass defense in the league right now as far as takeaways and PBUs and just guys being near the ball. So you have an opportunity to be creative up front. So I'm glad that Jonathan Gannon is doing it.
And why not? Greg's right, because A.J. Cann has been around for a while. He's the other guard. But you're not really worried about their interior. In fact, Quesenberry's a guy's a journeyman who's going to play center. To me, this line is very beatable.
Except for Tunsil, who's a really good player.
So
but other than that, it's very beatable.
I'm very interested to see what they come out to do. It's not about blitz percentage, it's about how they do it.
Right.
This is very beatable. They should be able to get up early.
Adam and I were discussing this before we came on. Blitz percentage for teams that play 5-man fronts in their nickel are skewed because every website, because they don't know what the play calls are, so they see 5-men rush, they call it a blitz.
Right.
But if you're rushing 5 down linemen, that will not be categorized as a blitz by coaches.
Right.
Because it's 5 down linemen.
It's not extra man pressure.
Yeah,
right?
because
It's
you do have 5 offensive linemen to block them.
Yeah.
So it's not
a blitz.
It's not a blitz.
So you would call it 6 if they
Yeah,
blitz.
then it becomes a blitz if there's some kind of overload element, or like for instance,
Or becomes stat.
or becomes right. But just 5 defensive linemen rushing is not going to be categorized as a blitz.
Right.
But it is on websites.
It is.
Right.
I'm always kind of dubious about what kind of stats I want to use.
Well, that's why you got to
because
watch
of that.
tape.
Yes.
If it's a team that is a 4-down team, all the time, then if it's 5, it is a blitz because someone's coming, from somewhere.
Right.
But if it's 5 across, it's
If the Texans rush 5 tonight, it's probably a blitz because they're usually a 4-down team.
they're a 4-down
Yeah,
team. That means
Right. Exactly. Awesome. Adam, let's talk about Davis Mills a little bit.
Yeah.
Because his name kept coming up when we were talking about Carson Strong coming out of Nevada as far as a quarterback who's got arm talent but had some injury history, and you wondered how that would
he was
impact
a third
him.
rounder,
Yeah.
and there was the one bad knee. Greg, does he still wear the brace? Could you see it?
No, he doesn't wear a brace
Okay,
anymore.
but that was an issue coming out of Stanford because the guy had a big arm. He's not going to run, but he can move a little bit in the pocket.
Yeah.
It's funny. People say he struggled, but Greg, you and I were talking about it. I think think it's not the struggles. It's just
I mean, look,
gotta be environment,
I'm not going to
too.
sit here and say he's a top 5 quarterback, but
Right.
but I think there's things to like about him, and there's things that clearly need to be worked on.
Okay.
Now, he has a big-time pedigree. He was the #1 recruited quarterback coming out of high school in the country, coming out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. The SEC stayed away from him because he committed to Stanford very early. The big issue with him, and I know some people on the Stanford staff, is they were very surprised that he came out. He only started, I believe, 11 games in college, and they were really excited about him coming back as the starter to play another year because the guy's got throwing talent. That's not an issue. But, the kinds of things, and I'll read it just because I take these notes. I said Mills must improve as a late in the down pocket quarterback. There are too many snaps in which he cannot make a timing and rhythm throw, and he gets stuck without a defined read and throw. At this point, he lacks the comfortable movement within the pocket to extend and deliver. And I'm talking about within the pocket.
Right.
He's not a second reaction runaround guy.
Right.
But right now,
Yeah.
when he gets stuck, he doesn't have a feel for pocket movement. He doesn't have pocket presence yet. Now, some might say you can never develop that. Some might say you can. That's an open question with different quarterback coaches might have different points of view.
Right.
But right now, that's an issue for him. So there are times he just gets stuck, and you've seen it, and he looks like he's, I don't want to say he's confused, because I doubt he's confused.
He just
but,
doesn't know where to go at that
the play
point.
kind of ends there. He does, yeah.
I don't know if I've ever come across a guy that was able to improve his pocket presence.
And maybe not, and you could be right.
Because there's something about the football just instinct that you know where people are.
Right.
Some guys have that, some guys don't.
And you could be right. Some might categorize him as robotic and mechanical, because when he can drop back, plan, and deliver, he looks really pretty throwing the ball. And the ball comes out. I mean, he doesn't have a gun, high-level gun, but he certainly has a good arm.
The term is feel it, don't see it. That's the one that quarterback coaches use. And I always love that, because Brady, at his best, as you guys know, he just has this sixth sense when to get rid of the football. To frustrate defensive linemen. I've talked to linemen before. They're like, he always knows that we're coming, but he doesn't see it. How do you know that?
But also, Brady, even though you wouldn't call him a great athlete by quarterback standards, had a great feel for pocket movement. You don't have to be a great athlete. Pocket movement is a totally different trait than getting out of the pocket. And I always use that analogy. I say the ability to be able to move within an area the size of a boxing ring or even a little smaller. Some guys have that feel. Brady had it. Dan Marino was great at it, even though Marino was not a great athlete either.
No, not at all.
Those
some
are
guys
that have it.
What's that?
They have to survive.
They have to survive. So some guys have it, and Jay could well be right. Maybe if Mills never gets it, he'll end up being a guy that after a number of years is not seen as a starter.
Yeah. Well, year two, obviously, you look at the environment and the context, but his numbers are actually down from last year as far as completion percentage, passer rating, QB rating. I wonder, Adam, do the Texans sort of still see him as maybe their future, or is he placeholder?
I think they got to do what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts. Could you give him some help?
Yeah.
Give him some time to develop, because it's hard. And by the way, Nick Cosell did draft him, albeit a third-round pick. They need to give him some help. They're getting nothing out of the tight end position. I know they like Brevin Jordan, but he had been hurt. He's only a fifth-round pick. They've not developed the offensive line well enough. It's not very good. They do have a running back, though, in Pierce. Cook's once out, so they're going to need a number one receiver. We'll see about Nico Collins. He's sort of developed, but he's been hurt. They need to develop that wide receiver position, so you got to help the guy.
They drafted Johnny Mechie, and unfortunately,
and
he's
that's
out
the thing.
that year,
And I love that. You probably like.
And we don't know if he's going to play.
Because he struck me. I mean, now that I've got
I know
that's
Jason
a guy you
likes
would
him.
like. Because I love the way he plays.
Any guy that can get in front of you and start doing this here, just once
could
or twice
play,
to get him out.
he knew how to get open?
Get open. Yeah. Getting open is.
But we don't know because of his illness. We just don't know. So they have to help the player.
They're in a tough spot. Well, I don't want to say they're in a tough spot. They'll make these decisions on their own. But if they end up with a top, 3-4 pick, you're going to hear a lot about the quarterbacks in this draft, but you're also going to hear about Will Anderson. So they're going to have a decision regarding Mills, because the question will be, do you take – because the bottom line is, if they were to take a quarterback in the top 3 or 4, they're basically saying that guy's our quarterback.
Right.
Then Mills becomes either a backup or they get rid of him.
Sure.
If they take Will Anderson, then they're saying, we think Mills is the guy and can really improve.
Gotcha.
So the pick is going to tell you ultimately what they think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So the quarterback has traits that you like. Davis Mills has traits.
I agree.
How much does losing so often and so frequently, 3-14-1, how does that kind of mess up the psyche of a player and kind of throw that off? Right?
Didn't Houston have that problem about 10 to 12 years ago with their
Derek Carr.
original quarterback?
David
Carr. David Carr.
Yeah.
How does that, he could have all the attributes in the world, but get so used to losing,
And by the way, that's a great point, because I was told by someone who was actually in the room in Houston that that was a new franchise. David Carr was the 29th rated player on their board. but it was a new franchise.
So they just felt they had to have that.
They wanted a quarterback,
huh?
and he was a great kid. He was
Right.
married with a kid. It's Houston, where
Right.
obviously it's a part of the country where religion is, really matter. No, I'm
Sure.
not saying it doesn't matter
No, I know
elsewhere,
what you're saying.
but
Yeah.
and he was, that guy. And all this is good, by the way. I don't want anybody to think I'm saying anything negative.
You're saying his character was great.
His
so
character was phenomenal, and they thought this is the guy that is a tremendous face of a
I was just gonna
franchise.
say that. Yep,
But
yep.
he was the 29th rated player on their board.
Wow.
Wow. All
can't-
right.
you can't-
Well, that
you
tells
know.
you all you need to know about what the
2002,
draft
and here's
war
the
room
problem
was like.
with him. They never protected him.
Yeah.
Never.
You could say what you want about the Eagles drafting over the years, but the thing that they do better than any other team, not that other teams don't know that you have to protect the quarterback, they do it every year. Go back to Joe Banner, and when Jeffrey Lurie took over the team, they started to figure it out with the offensive line. Because Jaws had some terrible offensive lines.
Yes.
But you can't
Well,
say they
and it's
haven't
funny
done
you
that
say
here.
that because the one thing the Eagles have done, and look, no one probably expected the record to be what it is.
Oh,
But so let's put that aside
this
for the
year?
moment. Yeah. But the point is that the one thing the Eagles have done, which a lot of teams don't do because they're interested in maybe skill players and all that. The Eagles have an offensive line and they have a defensive line, and that's a really good place to start.
Always.
It might be the best place to start.
Yes.
It was always on the Andy's team.
Right,
They would
right.
always have 10 or 11.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
All right, good stuff. Listen, check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto, so make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com, and you can go find them on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. So getting back to the Eagles tonight, if you're Jonathan Gannon, it seems like their script against guys like Davis Mills or offenses like the Texans is they can't march down the field without making a mistake on our defense. We don't need to dial up the blitzing that much. I don't think they blitzed Kenny Pickett that much. They did some interesting things that are different, but tonight, do you think that, especially with the short rest, that they just do what they do best, try to generate a four-man rush and let their takeaway secondary do their thing?
I would expect you'd see more five-man D-line pressures because
Okay.
they'll believe they can cover.
Right.
Obviously, if you have five-man rush, you have one less guy in the secondary. But they'll believe they can cover. That's not going to be an issue here. They're not going to play defense to back off and say, we're a little nervous here about.
Yeah, they're not going to play like they did last year.
Yeah.
I think they'll. Yeah,
I think they'll come after him.
a little bit selectively blitz.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what he'll do.
Well, I think that's what he does anyway. I don't
right,
think
that's what I'm saying,
They're
no
not,
deviation.
they're not a high percentage blitz, like the Wink Martindales of the world. They don't do that.
Right.
Their mindset is to stop the run.
Right.
Yeah, make this a passing game for them.
Yeah.
Stop the run.
Because again, who you really? I know Philip Dorsett can run, but who you really truly worried about in the
Well,
passing game,
Dorsett
right?
can.
He
Dorsett
can
can
run,
run.
I know. That's why he's the first round pick.
they have a few guys, and that's the thing about any team. When you have guys that can run, it automatically grabs your attention,
Okay.
especially in the secondary.
can Johnson.
Yeah.
Oh, Tyron Johnson.
Yeah.
Tyron Johnson can run.
Yeah.
Jason,
It automatically grabs your attention.
What does Gannon think tonight when he's standing on the sideline, sees Steven Nelson, right? Remembers last year, and then he looks at his own crew, and he sees I got James Bradbury instead.
Oh, he's a happy man.
Yeah.
He's
By
a
the
happy
way-
man, and is playing fantastic.
That's why I'm bringing
I think
it up.
the Eagles
Bradbury's playing
secondary
really well.
is playing. We talk about the pass rush, and I think the Eagles secondary is playing really good football. Don't you?
It's not just the secondary; it's the linebackers too.
Yeah, Edwards played great.
Yeah,
last week.
they're making they're getting a lot of hands-on balls.
Yeah.
Like they are. They're knocking passes down. They're doing great in coverage right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Not to rank them, because I know you don't like rankings, but all 32 teams.
yeah, that's a hard.
No,
because
but
I
when
can't
you
think right now.
No,
that-
but when you watch the tape, do you see any weakness in the secondary?
no, I mean,
Some tackling sometimes.
Okay.
but I mean, I think when I look at the Eagles' defense now, I don't think there's a glaring weakness. I mean,
Last year you
Oh,
said
for
it,
sure,
second corner.
for sure.
Right.
I don't see a
Linebacker.
glaring weak, which doesn't mean they'll never get beat. I mean, it's the
Yes.
NFL.
No,
But I
you're
don't
right.
think you go into a game now and say, oh, that's a spot they're really going to be concerned
Yeah, like we're
about
going to
here.
attack this guy
Yeah,
all night
like-
long. Yeah.
I just can't, in my mind, fathom how good TJ Edwards has been.
Yeah.
I know.
It's just like I know that he's a football player, but his growth and his maturity is on par to what you see from Jalen Hurts. Like how drastic of a jump it is. Like the guy's averaging 9 tackles a game. Like these are things that are happening right in front of us, and he's covering people, every down linebacker that you never would have thought that TJ Edwards would be doing.
He does not really come off the field.
It's amazing, right?
What do you guys see from him? What shows up? What grabs you?
Always near the football. He's been excellent in coverage this year. Not good. He's been excellent in coverage when they've asked him to cover running backs and being there. And then throwing lanes. Yeah, he's doing a great job. I have a few sacks this year, 4 tackles for loss. He's doing a great job.
Yeah.
All right, let's be nitpicky. You're a guy who played special teams in your career.
Oh boy.
Right?
Here we go.
You know how I feel about our special teams.
Yeah, you prided yourself on it, even if you didn't love playing it, right? You look at this Eagles special team. They've been fooled on a fake punt twice now in 3 weeks. Their coverage units aren't great. When you look and see what's going on there, do you wonder if that's going to be the Achilles heel that comes back to haunt them?
Fooled on the special teams, the last one against the Steelers. That's one of the hardest plays to stop for any, like, unless you have base defense on the field. We've always said, like, you literally can fake it every time. You probably got a 60-65% clip to make it. On, like, even whether it's like, if it's less than 8 yards or so, if you fake that and like run it with the PP, it's very, very hard because you got a bunch of guys that are playing receiver, running back, doesn't know gap integrity, any of that stuff right out there. So
don't look at me about special teams.
So that was just that. But yes, I think our special team needs an upgrade. And I thought that we missed it by not going out and getting a returner. That changes the way that guys block. If you know there's a guy that can take it to the house just with his natural ability, you play better as a blocker.
Right.
If you feel that the guy back there is going to catch it, and even if he gets wide open and he runs with it, he's going to get 5 yards at the most, you're like, forget it. Right? So I just think that guy makes you better. Devin Hester made those blockers better because they knew that he just needed a little bit of help. You don't need a bunch, just a little bit of help.
And that's like one extreme to it. Like right now they're with Britton Covey, rookie free agent. You're talking about a Hall of Fame level returner.
Yeah.
But I do have, all right, one other question on special teams.
We're slow too on special teams.
No, I want to get to that.
I'm going to tell you that.
I think that there might be a remedy that Adam and I have talked about, and I'll throw it at your way in a second. But I do want to remind everybody that our production team of Public Square and Rebel Hill are back, as they always are. The team of James and Zach are back behind the controls, bringing Inside the Birds to you in high definition with great graphics, videos, and more. Contact Public Square Media and Rebel Hill Productions to produce your webcast, podcast, live show, or anything else you can dream of. This team can bring it to life. You know that because they're bringing this show to life right now as we speak, and they do an incredible job. Big thanks to James and Zach. Make sure you contact them. So, Adam and I have been talking about this a couple of years ago when they won a Super Bowl, different regime, but they believed in putting starters on special teams. Malcolm Jenkins played special teams. Other guys who were starters played special teams.
On coverage.
On coverage. I'm not talking about Devontae Smith. I know we don't like to see that all the time, but
no, most good teams that I've been on had starting safeties play on kickoff.
Yeah.
They have to be the ones that they're used to doing it all the time.
Sure.
So that should happen just naturally.
Right.
Yes, you're I don't necessarily know if starters, but guys.
Not all of them, but some, high-level players. They were good on special teams in 2017.
I just think that our backup players are not the speediest players. Like our backup safeties aren't fast. Our backup corners are not that fast. Those are the guys that you need to be really fast.
Well, would you say, because I know there's teams around the league where when you talk to them, and Adam knows this too, they would say, oh man, we got 2 great special teamers. I don't think the Eagles, could you say that about the Eagles now?
No. So usually good special teamers end up being starters unless you're like Slater and you just can't catch.
Right.
They're great, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you're a receiver or something like that. But like usually if you're a defensive player and you're dominant on special teams, you're going to be a starter in the league.
But there are some teams that have 1 or 2 guys that are there
just
because
for that.
of special teams.
Camus used to be Camus Grugier Hill, who's now with Arizona.
A guy like that with Buffalo would be Kumaro.
Jake
Yeah.
Coomer, right.
There's some historic
He's a backup.
ones. Like David Tyree was historic special teams. Kareem Osgood from the Chargers.
Oh, he was a Pro Bowler.
Great special teams player.
Yeah.
Like there's guys, Quentin Michael before he became a star. Like Cole Anderson.
Yeah.
Great special teams
Montana
players.
Missile,
Rudy Ford, the reason why he's in the league is he's one of the fastest special teams coverage guys in the league. Marcus Epps is the only starter they have in coverage units.
Right.
Yeah.
There are plenty of starters on the block, the field goal, and punt in terms of protection. But oh, by the way, the inactives are done. 5 of them: Ian Book, Josiah Scott because he's hurt.
Yep.
Sermon, Josh Sills, Suapeta is inactive tonight.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if something happened.
Yeah, interesting on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Eagles will have 2 offensive linemen that are inactive.
Correct.
Sills and Opeta.
Yep.
Well, you gotta hope that they stay healthy there, which,
So-
by the way, they were able to do last week.
It'll be Driscoll,
Yep.
Cam Jurgens, and Andre Dillard as your backups. So they're dressed 8 instead of 9.
All right. Interesting. And by the way, we talked about it. Andre Dillard, not surprisingly, stays with the Eagles because they're going for it all here. And if they lose the left tackle, Jordan Mailata, they'd rather have that than whatever they may have been getting.
Saw the value of Big V in 2017.
Absolutely.
I mean, quite frankly, not that he was great, but I don't know if they would have won a Super Bowl without him.
I think that's fair to say.
Who else would they put in there? I have no idea.
I don't know. The only other alternative would have been to try to move Lane to left tackle and play somebody else at right tackle whose name is escaping me.
And
right
you know how Stout hates to move.
He does.
You know.
He does.
But it works.
That's become like a lot of teams now don't really like to do that. They're moving an offensive line. They'd rather play a backup than move a starter and play a backup somewhere else.
Well, because
How you practice, right?
you're moving 2 positions.
Right. You're changing
Well,
2
Jason
positions.
Peters used to say that moving from left tackle to right tackle is like switch hitting. And I used to be like, man, shut up. That's not true. But that's what he believed in his mind. So.
Well, Andre Dillard, man, he said it was like writing with your left hand instead of your right hand.
Yeah.
So Jason had no time for that, huh?
I'm like, man, stop it. You
All right.
Pass that, man.
And now he's playing guard.
All right, let's wrap this up. We'll get into Greg Cosell's favorite segment here, and that's talking about the sports stock market.
I love
Talking
that.
about our partners at Mojo. They help you build your portfolio of NFL players. What I miss? Did I get a
No,
laugh?
We're just having fun.
laughing.
We're just having
They have their
fun.
own hand signals.
Mojo's great because you get to invest in what you know. You turn your sports knowledge into real money. You can invest in quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, tight ends. Their prices are going to drop. They're going to raise. Hopefully, if you invest in them, they'll raise. Doesn't matter. It's off season, regular season. There is no off season for Mojo, and you can cash out at any time as you build your portfolio. And here's the cool thing about it. They've got a multiplier tab now. So if you want to invest in a player that you think is about to take off, and you got a 5 times multiplier, so let's say you buy his share at $10 and he does really well, and his stock goes up $5, it went up $25 if you hit the 5-time multiplier.
Remember when I said on our segment on talking about Mojo last week, I said if you're going to do Mojo, get Deontay Foreman right now.
That's right.
Because he's going to go off against Atlanta. 3 touchdowns for $130 or something like that.
I hope everybody
Get
listens
in
to
early,
you.
man.
I
Get in
hope
early.
everybody listens to you.
Who in the Eagles tonight could be sort of under the radar? Who could maybe do something?
Well, I was going to bring that up. I think, if you want to, go into Mojo and figure I can buy low on a guy, I mean, the Eagles like to spread their running game around a little bit, so maybe today's a day that Kenneth Gainwell against this bad rushing. I mean, obviously Miles Sanders is a good guy to invest in tonight, but he's already got a stock price that's fairly high. If you're trying to maximize your ROI, maybe you go Kenny Gainwell. What do you think?
Don't look at me.
Well, don't you think he could be poised to have a good game?
He could be.
Yeah.
Well, remember last week, now they didn't really pile it up, but this is a game should be similar to last week where they have a nice lead in the 4th quarter. I mean, I understand he pulled them because they had a game Thursday. That was smart, by the way.
Right.
But I could see Scott or Gainwell being two guys who could get the job done tonight in the 4th quarter.
Here's another interesting name, Dallas Goedert. He's actually down minus 1.5 since over the past, I guess, since last week.
I don't know how much they're going to throw it.
Because he only had 6 for 64, but I feel like against a cover 2 team, he might be able to find some
Beat
some
the whole
seams.
player?
Right?
Be the whole player.
Yeah.
That's a good selection.
You like Dallas Goedert tonight?
Second leading receiver now.
Yeah.
Tight end.
He needs to score more,
by
though.
1 yard over Devontae Smith.
By the way, if you're wondering about A.J. Brown after a 3-touchdown game, his share price is up 7.2%. 8.4%. He went from $18.04 to $19.44. So if you hit the guy at the right time, even if he's good and you're not buying low, you can profit anyway. That's the beautiful thing about Mojo.
The only thing about A.J. Brown is the same thing that Devontae Smith goes through every week. It could be someone every week.
It could be.
It could be Devontae tonight. Who knows?
It probably will be Devontae.
You think so? Yeah, they need to get him the ball because I know receivers want to get. When they're not getting it, something happens.
Yep. Jason talked about that on the Q&A podcast.
Yeah.
Got to feed everybody, right, Jay? Got to make everybody happy.
You don't want the defense coming out.
All right, well, Devontae Smith was down 2.10% after the last game because he only had 5 catches for 23 yards. So, again, you may want to seize on Devontae Smith tonight if you think he's going to have the big game, or else he's going to start crying about it. Right? No, I'm just kidding. All right, Mojo's available on New Jersey on iOS, and just by downloading the app, you got a chance to win up to $10,000 in free shares of player stock. You can click on the link in the description box here for this show on YouTube for a chance to win up to $10,000 in free shares of player stock. Got to be 21 and physically located in New Jersey to trade on Mojo. If you got a gambling problem, help is available. You can call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right. It is now time for our players to watch tonight in this game between the Eagles and Houston Texans. And, of course, Game Time Watches is the presenter of our Player to Watch segment. They are the leader in licensed sports watches. You can get your favorite NHL, NFL, or MLB team logo watch at GameTimeWatch.com. Eagles fans, Game Time Watch is partnered with Inside The Birds and is offering a special promo code for 20% off using the code ITB20. That's ITB20 to get 20% off on GameTimeWatch.com. And that code applies not just for Eagles watches, not just for NFL watches, but anything not already discounted. Lots of styles to choose from for men, women, kids. You can check out the men's varsity style watch, the shiny face, the big team color logo, metallic accents, metal case, and the thick black silicone strap makes it the everyday style watch. Check out the Varsity Drip Art Edition 2 at GameTimeWatch.com. All right, Jason Avant, who's your player to watch, your Game Time Watch player to watch tonight?
I'm going to go with Miles Sanders, 5 yards a carry, 5 touchdowns, worst rushing defense in the league. I got to go with Miles Sanders.
Hold on, you said 5 yards per carry. Did you say 5 touchdowns tonight?
Yeah, no.
5
I said 5. This is what he has this season.
I thought you were making a very bold
Right, I was going to say, wow.
See, a couple touchdowns, though.
Yeah.
He could. Craig, player to watch?
I'm going to go with Mr. Hurts. I actually think they're going to throw the ball. I think they're going to feel really comfortable throwing it as well.
Like underneath?
Kind of wherever they want to.
All right, well, sure. Okay, nice.
There's a lot of places to cover to.
You're seeing some Josh Allen tonight. It don't matter if you're cover 2. You're throwing it over the top. Okay. All right.
Dallas Goedert's stock is rising.
I was going to say, I feel good about that because I like getting my Dallas Goedert.
I only know about Mojo from 2 things and not about that. But that's one of them.
Yeah, I knew that was one.
There you
And
go.
Friday Night Lights,
Okay, I don't know that.
All right.
the book.
Right.
Who's your player to
Plus
watch?
Bissinger. Miles Sanders, obviously. There's
Okay.
nothing to run the heck out of this against this team. And you know what? Another thing I'd like to see, though, how about some screens to this guy? We talked about it last week. The guy he's catching everything this year.
Yeah, they were doing that for a couple of weeks very successfully, and then it just didn't happen against the Steelers. But
Can't
as
have
Jason
everything
said,
you want,
Jason said, sometimes on these short turnaround games, right?
Yeah.
You go to what you know well, right?
Yeah, I guess that wasn't a play that was working that great, I guess.
I don't know. You fell in love with the one screen where he did the little basketball move and then he was off. Remember that? That was good.
Yeah.
The tight end screen was working for them, so maybe we will see it tonight. All right, my player of the game, ironically, my player to watch is Dallas Goedert because I agree with you guys. I actually think they're going to come out throwing and peppering that cover 2 in the seams area, and I just see Dallas Goedert having a big game. Like 8 catches, over 100 yards big game. Like big games tonight.
That would be
That's a
reminiscent.
huge game.
He's only got 1 touchdown. I think he can double that
Which
tonight.
is hard to believe, but that would be reminiscent. Remember the Jets game, back-to-back, the Jets and the Commanders game last year? Nobody could handle him. Because if they ever made it a game where they said, okay, our matchups are favorable, let's get him the football. Not that he's Gronk or Kelsey, but you get my point. He could set team records for a game. He's that talented. When you've got A.J. Brown and Smith and a great running game, it's like pick your poison, right?
It is pick your poison.
Yeah.
I'm sure Davis Mills would like to pick a point. Any. Give me 1 poison tonight. No Nico Collins.
Yeah.
No Brandon Cooks.
Yep.
Right. And
He's
then
officially
I
out, yeah.
believe I read from Ed Werder at ESPN that they are going to start. Now, they'll play a tight end committee, but they're going to start a rookie by the name of Tegan Qualantarnio.
From Oregon State.
Yeah.
I butchered his last name. What is it?
I don't know. But
All right.
he's from Oregon State. He's actually an interesting prospect.
Why would you play him over O.J. Howard?
That I
though?
can't answer.
Okay.
What is up with O.J. Howard?
I don't know.
What is up with
I
O.J.
don't know.
Howard?
He never made it.
Like
Yeah.
like pass catching and speed.
Yeah, I
and,
know.
You know, his rookie year.
Hey, he caught a touchdown against Eagles last year on Thursday night.
I don't know this for a fact.
Yeah,
but maybe
for the
he's one of
Bucs.
those guys
yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't love football.
Down the right.
You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
He has a lot of talent.
He did catch a touchdown against the Eagles last
Last
year
year, yeah.
on Thursday Night Football for the Bucs.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was one of those 5-yard passes that
And he
became a
took-
touchdown.
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
He
Yeah.
caught 2 touchdowns in a game earlier this year. I think
did.
it was against
Yes.
the Colts.
Man, he's
It's
just
just
like
that
Mr. Disappear for the rest of the season. Very
Weird.
interesting stuff. All right. Well, again, what's the guy's name? His name is Tegan. I believe it's Qualantonio.
Quitorio.
Quitterano.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Quentin
Quiterano.
Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino
close.
is starting a tight end tonight. This is how you know it's time to start wrapping up the show, fellas.
What do we got for scores here, folks?
All right, time to get to our Rivers Casino picks of the game. Of course, food from Jack's Restaurant here at Rivers Casino is available at Bet Rivers Sportsbook every weekend and for every Eagles home game. Specials include $2 Miller Lights, $15 bottomless chips and salsa, $12 pretzel bites, and $16 easy peel shrimp. By the way, if anyone from Rivers is watching, we have a bare table. If any of these specials apply to us in the middle of the show, we're all right with that. They also have the home field advantage spin to win contest. We saw that last week during our watch party. It's pretty cool. Bettors who place a qualifying game day bet in the Bet Rivers Sportsbook can enter the spin to win contest every Eagles home game. You enter by placing at least a $50 bet on a pro football game. Maximum number of entries per wager is 3 per transaction. 8 winners get pulled via random drawing. They get to spin the wheel, and the prizes include free play, cash, 2 tickets to an Eagles home game, and if the Eagles win, 2 more winners are selected. And then don't forget they got the Choose the Champs Weekly Pick'em Challenge for Rush Rewards members to get 1 free entry each week. All that here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, where Philly loves a winner. Like I told you guys, the Eagles are 13.5-point favorites.
13.5.
However, the total for the game, the over-under, it's like 45. So if you do the math on that, if the Eagles are going to win by 14 and keep it around 45, it means it's going to be an ugly game for the Texans.
Yeah.
All right, let's go through our picks. Jason, who's winning and by how much?
The Eagles. I think I have 33-13.
You have 33 to 30. I love this. This is like a test for you guys.
Yeah.
Me
On
too.
on your own picks. Yes, you are correct. 33 to 13. So the Eagles win by 20. They cover the spread, and
Yeah.
they're just over that total of 45.5
Yeah.
All right.
Rivers.
at Rivers. You're about to go make it. All right. Well, we'll hurry up for you so you can get over there. The lines are getting long. Greg,
I think I said 30 to 10, maybe?
you have 34 to 10.
34 to 10.
Do you want to change it?
No,
All right.
34 to 10.
All right, because then Jimmy would be pretty upset with you from our if you had
34 to
change
10.
it.
Need,
All right.
need I say who I believe will win 34 to 10?
No, I think we know who
I think you
will
got
win.
it.
Even if you did, there's a graphic
Yeah.
that appears on the screen
visitor.
that shows
Yeah.
it. All right, so they cover easily, and then, they're over. Oh, no,
I'm 1
just
point under.
25, 1 point under. Adam, who wins tonight?
I was Mr. Under last year, and it seemed to work. But this year, and it's really working around the league, the unders are going like 65% of the time.
Really?
Insane, yeah.
Okay.
This week, I got an Eagles 30, the Texans 10.
Cover and under.
Yeah, I can't, I don't know how they're going to score unless the Eagles turn it over, which they really don't do, only 2 turnovers.
Only 2. Only team in the league that has not lost a fumble, your Philadelphia Eagles. I just gave them
Knocking
like
on
6
that wood,
fumbles
right,
tonight, right?
right.
Everybody's
Right,
going to be fumbling tonight. No, I got the Eagles winning 38-9.
38? What's
That's
Wow.
a cover
By the
and
way,
an
38
over.
to
What's with you with
9?
the odd score?
How is 9? That's 3 field goals.
Are they
And
gonna
then
get-
5 touchdowns and a field goal
So
for the
you're
Eagles.
saying that
I
they're
get it.
actually- They're going to get
I
the
get
ball.
you.
That's like the most. That's the least.
He obviously has an
complicated
issue
score
with
ever.
math. It's
Okay,
okay.
wait a minute. They're going to get the
7
ball
and
deep in Eagles territory and kick 3 field goals. They're actually going to move the football.
Well, yeah.
Who's going to catch
3
the ball?
field goals. Well, because in the fourth quarter, when the Eagles are playing soft, that's when they're going to get their
So
3 field goals.
Teagan, the rookie, nobody knows how to pronounce his last name. He's going to have a big play.
Big night for Teagan, Quentin Tarantonio.
Got it. All right.
All right, remember, you can bet on the game right here at Rivers Sportsbook and Casino, or just go to your Bet Rivers app on your phone and take care of it there. Big thanks to Rivers, big thanks to Sky Motor Cars, the teams at Rebel Hill and Public Square, Mojo for our business partners. We love them. Make sure you check out all of our coverage on InsideTheBirds.com after and the post-game show with Adam, myself, and former Eagles offensive tackle Trey Thomas. Enjoy the game. Go Phils.